travel back, rise above the cottage, and fly the eye across the night time. Miles away, pass invisibly across something that is itself invisible but which buzzes like a swarm of flies as it drags itself over the ground. Continue until you come to the big city, the high old tower and the ancient magical university, and in the university, the library. And here is the section of the dangerous books, the ones that are kept chained in cages, snapping at you as you pass, or in vats of iced water, or clamped between lead plates. But here is a book, faintly glowing with thermic radiation under a glass dome. Young wizards are encouraged to read it. The title, Hivers, a dissertation upon a device of amazing cunning, by Sensibility Bustle, D.M. Phil, B.L.L., Patricius Professor of Magic. Most of the handwritten book is about how to construct a powerful magical apparatus to capture a hiver. But on the very last page, Dr. Bustle writes, according to the ancient volume Res Centum et Una Quas Magus Facere Potest, 101 Things a Wizard Can Do, hivers are a type of demon, and Cuvier gives them a section under Wandering Spirits in Liber Imanus Monstrorum, the monster book of monsters. However, my own not inconsiderable research gives quite a different story. Hivers were formed in the first seconds of creation. They are not alive, have no body, brain, or thought of their own, but have, as it were, the shape of life, tumbling gently through the endless night between worlds. According to Professor Poldred, they seem to take refuge in bodies that have power of some sort, great strength, great intellect, great prowess with magic. Poldred was a very inferior thinker compared to myself, but in this case he is right, because this morning at 2 o'clock I captured a hiver with my device, and now it is locked inside my head. I can sense its memories, the memories of every creature it has ever inhabited. Oh, lesser wizards warn us that a hiver distorts the mind of its host, curdling it and inevitably causing an early death through brain fever. I say poppycock. Because of my superior intellect, I control the hiver. It does not control me. It has not changed me in any way. At this point, the writing is smudgy, apparently because Bustle was beginning to dribble. Oh, how they held me back over the years, those worms who call themselves my superiors. They laughed at me, but not now. Even so-called chums. Oh, yes. Creatures inhabited by a hiver become paranoid and insane, they said. Hivers cannot be controlled, they squeaked. Cowards! And as for those even now having the disrespect to hammer on my door because of what I did to the so-called Arch-Chancellor and the College Council, how dare they judge me? Like all insects, they have no concept of greatness, but I will show them what glories await. I am Master And there the writing ends. Tiffany opened her eyes. There she was, a few feet away from herself. She could see the back of her own head. It had been a shock the first time she'd done this. It felt as if she was stepping out of her body, but still had a sort of ghost body that could walk around. But Miss Tick had said that a witch had to know how to stand apart, and that she'd find out more when her talent grew. Anyway, for now it was a good trick when you didn't have a mirror. Carefully she moved around the room until she was in front of herself, looking herself up and down. She had a new dress on, pale green. Of course it was bought big so that she'd grow into it, but it'd have to do. And she could see the pointy hat on her head, though she had to look hard for it. It was like a glint in the air, gone as soon as you saw it. That's why she'd been worried about the new straw hat, but it had simply gone through it as if the new hat wasn't there. It was invisible, except in the rain. However, she could touch it any time, provided she shut her eyes. She'd been given it by the greatest witch in the world as a kind of reward, because Tiffany had done magic, serious magic. Before she'd done it, she hadn't known she could, and after she'd done it, she hadn't known how she had. Now she had to learn how. "Tiffany!" her mother shouted up the stairs. "Miss Tick's here." "See me not," she said, and the vision of her, or whatever it was, vanished. It wasn't unusual for girls as young as Tiffany to go into service, working as a maid somewhere, but Tiffany practically ran Home Farm's dairy by herself, and her parents had been surprised she'd wanted to. But as Tiffany said, it got you out into the world. You never knew what it could lead to. That rather cunningly got her mother on her side. Her mother's aunt had gone off to be a scullery maid, then a parlour maid, had worked her way up to housekeeper, had married a butler, and now lived in a fine house. It wasn't her fine house, but she was practically a lady. Tiffany didn't intend to be a lady, though. This was all a ruse, and Miss Tick was in on it. Miss Tick was a sort of witch finder. That seemed to be how witchcraft worked. Some witches kept a magical lookout for girls who showed promise and found them an older witch to help them along. But you weren't allowed to charge money for the witching, so all witches did some other job as well. Miss Tick was basically a witch disguised as a teacher. She travelled from place to place teaching anything to anybody in exchange for food or old clothes. And over the last year, Tiffany's mother had been quite surprised at Tiffany's sudden thirst for education. But then a month ago, the message had come: be ready. So Miss Tick had visited the farm and had explained to Mr. and Mrs. Aching that an elderly lady up in the mountains had heard of Tiffany's excellent prowess with cheese and was willing to offer her the post of maid at $4 a month. It was a good offer. Her parents had been slightly scared of Miss Tick, but had been brought up to believe that people who used long words were quite important, so they'd agreed. So here she was, wrapping her old boots, which had been worn by all her sisters before her, and putting them in the second-hand suitcase her mother had bought her. It looked as if it were made of bad cardboard or pressed grape pips mixed with earwax and had to be held together with string. Then there were goodbyes. She cried a bit, her mother cried a lot, and her little brother Wentworth cried as well, just in case he could get a sweet for doing so. Tiffany's father didn't cry, but gave her a silver dollar and gruffly told her to be sure to write home every week, which is a man's way of crying. Then everyone stood at the gate and waved to her and Miss Tick until they'd gone nearly all the way down the chalky white lane to the village. And then there was silence, except for the sound of their boots on the flinty surface and the endless song of the skylarks overhead. It was late August, very hot, and the new boots pinched. "I should take them off, Tiffany." Tiffany didn't bother to ask how Miss Tick knew about the tight new boots. She got her old boots out of the case. They were much more comfortable. They'd been walking since long before Tiffany was born and knew how to do it. "And are we going to see any little men today?" said Miss Tick once they were walking again. "I don't know. I told them I was leaving, but there's always one or two of them watching me." Miss Tick sighed. "When I was a little girl, I'd have loved to see the Pixies. I used to put out little saucers of milk. No, you should have used strong liquor." Tiffany glanced at the hedge and thought she saw for the snap of a second a flash of red hair. And she smiled. Tiffany had once been, if only for a short time, the nearest a human can be to a queen of the fairies. Admittedly, she'd been called a Kelda rather than queen, and the Nakmak should only be called fairies to their face if you were looking for a fight. On the other hand, they were always looking for a fight, and if one was all by himself, he'd kick his own nose just to keep in practice. Technically, they had lived in fairyland, but had been thrown out, probably for being drunk. And now they watched her to help and protect her, because if you'd ever been their Kelda, they never forgot you. Her last visit to the ancient burial mound high on the chalk down where the Pixies lived had been to attend the wedding of Rob Anybody, the big man of the clan, to Jeanie of the Long Lake. She was the new Kelda, and was going to spend most of the rest of her life having babies like a queen bee. To be honest, Tiffany had felt a bit out of place at the celebration, being 10 times as tall as the next tallest person there, but Rob Anybody had made a long speech, calling her our fine, big wee young hag, before falling face first into the pudding. It had all been very hot and loud, but she joined in the cheer when Jeanie carried Rob over a tiny broomstick laid on the floor. Traditionally, both bride and groom should jump over it, but no self-respecting Feegle would be sober on his wedding day. Tiffany was going to be sorry to leave them behind, but not terribly sorry. She was 11 now, and had a feeling that after a certain age you shouldn't slide down holes in the ground to talk to little men. They reached the village green and waited for the carrier's cart that went just a bit faster than walking pace and would take 5 hours to get to Two Shirts, where, so Tiffany's parents thought, they'd get the big coach to the mountains. Tiffany could see it coming up the road when she also heard hoofbeats coming across the green. She turned. It was Roland, the Baron's son, on a fine black horse. He leapt down, then stood there looking embarrassed. "You're, going then?" he said to Tiffany. "Yes. I got, this for you. I had it made by a man." He held out a package wrapped in soft paper. Tiffany put it carefully in her pocket. "Thank you." And she dropped a small curtsy. Strictly speaking, that's what you had to do to a nobleman, but it only made Roland blush. "I, hope you'll like it." "Thank you." She curtsied again because of the effect it had. It was a bit cruel, but sometimes you had to be. "Here's the cart. Don't miss it." It would be very hard to miss the cart. It was so slow that stop never came as a surprise. Tiffany sat among packages, fruit boxes and rolls of cloth, her old boots dangling over the back of the cart as it lurched away on the rough road. And she knew Miss Tick. By now she'd be bursting to ask, because witches hate not knowing things, and sure enough... "Aren't you going to open it?" "Open what?" "He gave you a present." "Oh, I'll wait until later." She didn't actually dislike him. She'd found him in the land of the Queen of the Fairies and had sort of rescued him, and now he'd taken to hanging around. She kept accidentally running into him on walks more often than was really possible. He was always polite, but she couldn't stand the way he kept looking like a spaniel that had been kicked. But admittedly he was less of a twit than he had been. On the other hand, they'd been such a lot of twit to begin with. "I've never seen that before," said Miss Tick. On this side of the hills, the chalk rose out of the plain quite suddenly, and there was a little valley cupped into the fall of the down, and there was a carving made in the turf. It had been cut away in long flowing lines so that the bare chalk made the shape of an animal. "It's the white horse." Tiffany welcomed it as an old friend. "Why do they call it that?" "Because chalk is white." "No, I mean, why a horse? It doesn't look like one. It's just flowing lines." "That look as if they're moving," Tiffany thought. It had been cut out of the turf in the old days, people said, by the folk who'd built the stone circles and buried their kind in big earth mounds. And they'd cut it out 10 times bigger than a real horse, and, if you didn't look at it with your mind right, the wrong shape too. Yet they'd owned horses, and they weren't stupid people just because they lived a long time ago. Tiffany had once asked her father about the look of the horse, and he told her what Granny Aching had told him when he was a little boy. "'Tain't what a horse looks like, it's what a horse be." Yesterday, Tiffany had said goodbye to Granny Aching. The iron wheels of the old shepherding hut were half buried in the turf high up on the hills. The pot-bellied stove, which still stood lopsided in the grass, was red with rust. The chalk hills were taking them, just like they'd taken the bones of Granny Aching. The rest of the hut had been burned on the day she'd been buried. No shepherd would have presumed to use it. Granny Aching had been the chalk country, its best shepherd, its wisest woman, and its memory. It was as if the green downland had a soul that walked about in old boots and a sacking apron and smoked a foul old pipe and dosed sheep with turpentine. Sheep's wool, jolly sailor tobacco, and turpentine had been the smells of the hut and the smell of Granny Aching. Tiffany only had to smell them now to be back there in the warmth, silence and safety of the hut. It was the place she'd gone to when she was upset, a fort against the world. And yesterday she'd stood there while the wind blew over the turf and sheep bells clonked in the distance. The chalk was her world. The land was in her bones, as Granny Aching had said. It was in her name, too. In the old language of the Nac-Mac-Feegle, her name sounded like land under wave. "I've got to go away," she'd said, "to learn proper witching, but I will come back soon. I promise I'll come back better than I went. I've got to look after the hills like you did. I want to be as good as you were." A blue butterfly, blown off course, had settled on her shoulder, opened and shut its wings once or twice, then fluttered away. "I expect you're upset about leaving the chalk, aren't you?" said Miss Tick as the cart rattled on. "No. It's okay to be if you want to have a bit of a cry." "Thank you, but I'm all right, honestly. And, of course, if you were feeling a bit downcast, I'm sure you could open the present. Tell me about Miss Level," Tiffany said quickly. The name was all she knew about the lady she was going to stay with. Miss Level, yes. She's not really very old, but she says she'll be happy to have a third pair of hands around the place." "There's someone else there already?" No, not exactly." "Then she's got 4 arms?" Miss Tick sighed. "Best wait until you meet her, but I'm sure you'll get along. She's very good with people, and in her spare time she's a research witch." "A research witch?" "Yes, she tries to find new spells by learning how old ones were really done. You know all the stuff about ear of bat and toe of frog? They never work. But Miss Level thinks it's because we don't know exactly what kind of frog, or which, I'm sorry, I'm not going to help chop up innocent frogs and bats. Oh, no, she never kills any. She only uses creatures that have died naturally, been run over, or committed suicide. Frogs can get quite depressed at times." The Nac-Mac-Feegle of the chalk hated writing for all kinds of reasons, but the biggest one was writing stays.
A word written can hang a man.
But now they had a new Kelder. And a new Kelder brings new ideas. Kelder Jeanie was from the Long Lake clan up in the mountains, and they did write things down. So she didn't see why her husband shouldn't either. And now sweat was dripping off Rob Anybody's forehead. He held the stump of pencil in both hands and leant backwards, his heels leaving little grooves in the packed earth floor of the mound, as two of his brothers pushed him towards the piece of paper pinned up on the chamber wall.
"Wheest now, stop that!"
snapped Jeanie, folding her arms.
"I can't hae a husband who can't even write his own name. Aye, but woman, 'tis a bushel of trouble writing. Ach, 'tis easy. Big Joe Babbies can do it. Ach, you're a horrid woman, Jeanie McFiggle."
He squared up to the paper.
"There's my brave lad. Right then, the first letter is an R, remember? That's the one that looks like a fat man walking."
The assembled Pixies watched as Rob, with his tongue sticking out of the corner of his mouth, dragged the pencil through the curves and lines of the letters.
"Aye, that's it," said Jeanie. "A bonny effort. You've writ your own name."
Rob grinned.
"My name drawn by me, right?"
Jeanie nodded.
"Aye, but ours the wrong way round. Ach, I didn't ken which way the fat man was walking."
Jeanie sighed as he stuck the pencil into his hair and gave her a defiant look.
"Rob!"
Hamish and the big Yan came tumbling through the fake rabbit hole that was the entrance to the mound.
"Rob,"
said Hamish,
"we watched the big wee young hag stay for a while like you said, but there's a hiver after her." "Are ye sure? I never heard of one of them in this world." "Oh, aye," said the big Yan. "It's buzzing fair made my teeth ache." "So did you no tell her, you dafty?" "But there's that other hag wi' a Rob, the educating hag wi' a face like a yard of yoghurt. You said we wasna to show ourselves." "Aye, well, this is different."
Rob Anybody stopped. Jeanie was tapping her foot. Her arms were still folded.
"What's this about the big wee hag?" "Oh, well, aye. Do you not bring her to mind, dear? She was oor Kelder for a day or two, you ken. And I'm the Kelder of this clan noo, am I no? There'll be no more chasing after this big wee girl. Aye, but what? A hiver's chasing the poor wee lass. Naebody in history has survived her hiver. You cannae kill it, you cannae stop it, you cannae... But ye said she's got the makings of a powerful hag. Was ye no telling me how she even fought the Queen of the Fairies and won? Wanged her wi' a skillet, ye said. That means she's good, aye? Aye, but a hiver's worse than aye, weel. We all had to dree our weed, Rob. Whatever's out there, she's got to face it. If she's a true hag, she'll find a way herself. If she cannae, then she's nae true hag."
Two Shirts was simply a bend in the road with a name, an inn for coaches, a blacksmith's shop, and a small store with the word souvenirs written optimistically on a scrap of cardboard in the window. And that was it. It sat and baked silently in the afternoon sun. In the middle of the road, an elderly spaniel dozed in the dust. Tiffany had never seen souvenirs before, so she went into the store and spent half a penny on a small wood carving of two shirts on a washing line and two postcards entitled View of Two Shirts, which showed the souvenir shop and what was probably the same dog sleeping in the road. When she came out, she found Miss Tick frowning back the way they'd come. "Something the matter, Miss Tick?" "What? Oh, no, I just...
Look, shall we have something to eat?
In the inn, Miss Tick found a woman who'd promised them some scones and tea. Miss Tick also asked for a fresh egg in its shell. They sat and ate on a bench outside the inn, but Miss Tick kept staring at the road.
Is there something wrong, Miss Tick? I'm not sure.
The teacher removed her straw hat and took from inside it a couple of pieces of wood and a reel of black thread. She rolled up her sleeves, looked around quickly in case 2 shirts had sprouted a population, then broke off a length of thread and picked up the egg. Egg, wood, thread and fingers blurred, and there was the egg hanging from Miss Tick's fingers in a neat little black net. Tiffany was impressed, but Miss Tick hadn't finished. She began to draw things from her pockets. Beads, a couple of feathers, a glass lens, strips of coloured paper, all got threaded into the tangle of wood and cotton.
What's that?
said Tiffany.
A shamble.
Is it magic?
Not exactly. It's trickery. Now, let me see what I can see.
She pushed the fingers of her right hand into the spiderwork of threads and pulled. Egg, glass, beads and feathers danced through the tangle.
Oh, it's like Cat's Cradle. Played that, have you?
Miss Tick concentrated, staring into the complex web she'd created.
Yes, there's something.
And panic gripped Tiffany. Sunlight reflected off the white dusty road. Bees hummed. But it was all wrong. She could feel pressure bearing down on her, pushing at her, squeezing the landscape under the bright light of day. Miss Tick's cradle of threads was motionless beside her, frozen in the moment of bright horror. Then the threads moved by themselves. The egg danced, the glass glinted, the beads slid and jumped from string to string. The egg burst, the coach rolled in. It arrived dragging the world behind it in a cloud of dust and hooves. Harness jingled, horses steamed, doors opened. The pressure went. No, it fled. Miss Tick pulled out a handkerchief and started to wipe egg off her dress. The rest of the shamble had disappeared into a pocket with remarkable speed. The richer passengers got out of the coach, and the poorer ones climbed from the roof. Grumbling and stamping their feet, they disappeared into the inn.
Now, said Miss Tick as the door swung shut, see that little wood up there? We're going for a stroll, and when Mr. Crabber the carter sees your father, he'll say he dropped you off here before the coach arrived, and everyone will be happy, and no one will have lied.
Tiffany picked up the suitcase.
Miss Tick? Yes? You've got a yoke on your hat. It's seen worse. Let's go.
They trudged away.
What happened just now?
I don't know.
You feel all right?
Yes, but you are very nervous, and the egg exploded.
Yes. A shamble, you see, can be used as a simple magic detector and amplifier. It's actually very crude, but it's always useful to make one in times of distress and confusion. I probably didn't make it right. And you do sometimes get big discharges of random magic.
You made it because you were worried.
Worried? Certainly not. I am never worried.
20 minutes later, the passengers got back into the coach. The coachman noticed the horses were sweating and wondered why he could hear a swarm of flies when there were none to be seen. The dog that had been lying in the road was found later cowering in the inn stables, whimpering. The wood was about half an hour's walk away. They sat on a log, and Miss Tick told Tiffany about shambles.
They're not magical, then?
No, There's something to be magical through. You mean like spectacles help you see but don't see for you?
That's right, well done. You can make one out of anything so long as it looks right.
And then tell if magic is happening?
If that's what you're looking for, yes. When you're good at it, you can use it to really focus on what you have to do. You can use it for protection, like a curse net, or to send a spell. All young witches should learn how to make one. Miss Level will help you.
Tiffany looked around the wood. The shadows were growing longer. Bits of Miss Tick's teachings floated through her head. Always face what you fear. Have some string. Never cackle. Never wish, especially upon a star which is astronomically stupid. Do what you must do. Open your eyes, and then open your eyes again.
Miss Level has long grey hair, has she? She said.
Oh, yes.
A tall lady? Wears necklaces and glasses on a chain?
Miss Tick wasn't a fool. She looked around the clearing.
Where is she? Standing by the tree there.
Even so, Miss Tick had to squint. Witches filled space. If they didn't want to be seen, they became amazingly hard to notice.
Ah, well done. I was wondering when you'd notice.
Huh, thought Tiffany. Miss Level got realer as she walked towards them. She was all in black, but clattered slightly as she walked because of all the black jewellery she wore, and she had 2 arms, the normal number.
Ah, Miss Tick, and you must be Tiffany. Tiffany, said Miss Tick, I'd just like to have a word with Miss Level, senior witch business.
Ha, thought Tiffany again, because she liked the sound of it.
I'll go and have a look at a tree then, shall I? I should use the bushes, dear, said Miss Level. I don't like stopping once we're airborne.
There were some holly bushes that made a decent screen, but after being talked to as though she were 10 years old, Tiffany would rather have allowed her bladder to explode.
I beat the Queen of the Fairies, she thought.
All right, I'm not sure how, but I did it. She was angry at being sent away like that. A little respect wouldn't hurt, would it? Mistress Weatherwax, the witch all the other witches secretly wanted to be, had shown her respect. You'd think they could make a bit of effort. She said, "See me," and stepped out of herself and walked away towards them in her invisible ghost body. When she looked back, she saw her solid body standing demurely by the holly bushes. As she drew nearer stealthily, she heard Miss Tick say,
"Quite frighteningly precocious. Oh dear, I've never got on well with clever people, and of course you know my situation." "Yes, Miss Level, but your work does you credit. That's why Mistress Weatherwax suggested you." "But I'm afraid I'm getting a bit absent-minded. It was terrible flying down here, because like a big silly, I left my long-distance spectacles on my other nose."
Her other nose? Thought Tiffany.
"I'm without an egg," said Miss Tick. "I have a beetle in a matchbox," squeaked Miss Level.
Their hands flew to their pockets and pulled out string, feathers, bits of coloured cloth. They know I'm here, thought Tiffany. See me not. She blinked and arrived back in the patient little figure by the holly bushes. Miss Level was frantically making a shamble. Miss Tick was staring.
"Tiffany, come here at once." "Yes, Miss Tick."
She trotted forward like a good girl. And the pressure came. It seemed to squash the wood flat. Tiffany sank to her knees, her hands over her ears, and a pain like the worst earache squeezing her head.
"Finished!"
Miss Level held up a shamble made from string, crow feathers, glittery black beads, and, in the middle, an ordinary matchbox. Tiffany yelled. The pain was like red-hot needles. Her ears filled with the buzz of flies, and the matchbox exploded. Then there was silence, and birdsong, and a few pieces of matchbox spiralling down.
"Oh dear, he was quite a good beetle."
Tiffany blinked. The pain had gone, leaving only a burning memory. She scrambled to her feet.
"Tiffany, are you all right?"
"I think so, Miss Tick."
"Then a word, if you please. You haven't been summoning things, have you?"
"No, I don't know how."
"It's not your little men, is it?"
"No, they don't do that sort of thing. They just shout crivens and start kicking people on the ankle."
"Well, whatever it was, it seems to have gone,"
said Miss Level.
"And we should go too, otherwise we'll be flying all night."
She reached behind a tree and picked up what looked like a bundle of firewood.
"My own invention, see? The handle shoots out by means of this button." "Oh, sorry. It does that sometimes. Anyone see where it went?"
The handle was located in a bush and screwed back in. Then Miss Level pulled some rope from her pocket, and the old suitcase was tied to the bristle end of the broomstick, which now floated calmly above the ground. Tiffany watched her closely. She definitely had only one nose on her face.
"There, a nice comfy seat. If you just hang on behind me, that's what I normally do."
"You normally hang on behind you? How can—"
"Tiffany,"
said Miss Tick loudly,
"I'm sure Miss Level wants to leave while you've still got some daylight."
The stick bobbed a little as Miss Level climbed onto it. She patted it invitingly.
"Not frightened of heights, are you, dear?"
"No." Tiffany climbed on.
"I'll drop in when I come up for the witch trials," said Miss Tick, as Tiffany felt the stick rise gently under her. "Take care."
When Miss Level asked Tiffany if she was scared of heights, it had been the wrong question. Tiffany was not afraid of heights at all. What she was afraid of was depths, of dropping a long way out of the sky. She was afraid of the ground.
"Ever flown before, dear?" "Oh."
Tiffany clung to Miss Level's belt. The air was rushing past her now. It was a lot colder, and there was a sickening feeling in her stomach as the stick curved away towards the mountains.
"By the way, did Miss Tick warn you about thick woolly pants?"
Miss Tick had mentioned how a sensible witch wore at least 3 pairs to stop ice forming, but she'd forgotten.
"No." "Oh dear, we'd better hedge-hop then."
The stick dropped like a stone. Tiffany never forgot that ride, though she often tried to. They flew just above the ground, which was the blur below her feet. Every time they came to a fence or a hedge, Miss Level would cry, "Ups-a-daisy!" Tiffany threw up twice. After a while, they left the farmlands behind and started to fly through foothills. But the last sunlight was draining away, and soon all below was darkness. Tiffany must have dozed off, clinging to Miss Level, because she felt herself jerk awake as the broomstick stopped in mid-air. The ground was some way below, but someone had set out a ring of what turned out to be candle ends burning in old jars. Delicately, the stick settled down until it stopped just above the grass. At this point, Tiffany's legs decided to untwist, and she fell off.
"Up we get!"
Cheerfully, Miss Level picked her up.
"Sorry about being sick."
"No, you did very well." "Did you light these candles, Miss Level?"
"Yes."
"By magic?"
"Well, yes, it can be done by magic,
but I prefer matches. Now let's get inside. It's chilly. I do hope you'll like it here." There was that cheerfulness again. But that cheerfulness has got cracks around the edges, thought Tiffany. Something isn't right here. There was a cottage with some curse nets hanging outside. Then Tiffany followed Miss Level into a small, brightly lit and amazingly tidy kitchen. A fire burnt brightly in the iron stove. Tiffany looked at the bubbling pot on the stove and the loaf on the table. She could smell it was freshly baked bread. She lived by herself, Tiffany thought. So who lit the fire? A bubbling pot needs stirring. Who stirred it? And someone lit the candles. Who? Is anyone else staying here, Miss Level?
No, only me. Now, you've had a long day. I'll show you your room and where things are, and bring you up some stew.
There was a brief tour by candlelight. There was a privy, a two-holer, which Tiffany thought a bit odd, but her bedroom was a nice room. Everything had frills. Bedrooms back on the farm were only for shutting your eyes in. This room had a chest of drawers, and the bed made no sound when Tiffany sat on it. The springs of her old bed all made different noises. She could move her body and play the bells of St. Ungulants on them. Cling, doing, doing, cling, bing, boing, bling, blang, bloing, ding, boing. In her suitcase was a small box, and in it she kept keepsakes. A piece of chalk with a fossil in it, which was quite rare, and her personal butter stamp, which showed a witch on a broomstick, in case she got a chance to make butter here, and a dobby stone, which was supposed to be lucky because it had a hole in it. There was also a blue and yellow wrapper from an old packet of Jolly Sailor tobacco, a buzzard feather, and an ancient flint arrowhead wrapped carefully in a piece of sheep's wool. She lined these up neatly on the chest of drawers, but they didn't make the place look more homely. They just looked lonely. Someone knocked at the door.
It's me!
Miss Level came in with a tray that held a bowl of beef stew and some bread. She put it on the little table by the bed.
Thank you.
Miss Level paused at the door.
It'll be so nice having someone to talk to apart from myself. I do hope you won't want to leave.
Tiffany waited until the door had shut before checking there were no bars on the window. There'd been something scary about Miss Level's expression, sort of pleading and frightened at once. The beef stew, though, tasted just like beef stew, and not, to take an example completely and totally at random, stew made out of the last poor girl who'd worked here. She'd nearly finished it when something tried to take the bowl out of her hand. It was the gentlest of tugs, and when she pulled it back, the tugging stopped immediately. OK, she thought. Another strange thing. Well, this is a witch's cottage. She put the empty bowl and spoon back on the tray. All right, they've finished. The tray rose into the air and drifted gently towards the door. The door opened. The tray sailed through, the door shut. And it seemed to her it was vitally important that she thought before doing anything, and so she thought it would be stupid to run around screaming because your tray had been taken away. So she cleaned her teeth at the washstand, then realised there was something soft yet crackly in her dress pocket. Oh, she'd forgotten. She pulled out Roland's present and opened the white tissue paper carefully. And stared. It was a necklace. It was the horse. Not what a horse looks like, but what a horse be. It had been carved in the turf by people who'd managed to convey in a few flowing lines everything a horse was: strength, grace, beauty and speed, straining to break free of the hill. And now someone clever and therefore probably expensive, had made it out of silver. It was flat, and like the horse on the hillside, some parts of it were not joined to the rest of the body. The craftsman, though, had joined these carefully together with tiny silver chain, so that when she held it up it was all there, moving while standing still. She had to put it on, and there was no mirror. Oh, well, see me, she said. And far away, down on the plains, something that had lost the trail awoke, and the mist on the fields parted as something invisible started to move. Tiffany stood in front of herself. The horse looked very well on the new dress, silver against green. She wondered how much it must have cost Roland. She wondered why. "See me not," she said. Slowly she took the necklace off, wrapped it up in its tissue paper, and put it in the box. Then she got into her nightgown, dragged the chest of drawers in front of the door, slid into the bed, blew out the candle, and lay back in the dark. And she remembered waking up in the night to hear the chest of drawers very slowly slide back to its original position. The moon was on the way to being full. A gibbous moon, it's called, but it seldom gets illustrated. The full moon and the crescent moon get all the publicity. Rob Anybody sat alone on the mound, staring at the distant mountains, and sighed. A hand touched him lightly on the shoulder.
"Daft Willie tells me you haven't been eating your meals,"
said Jeanie, sitting beside him. Rob sighed again. Jeanie held out a tiny wooden cup.
"This is the last of the special ship liniment your big wee hag gave us at our wedding. I put it by for emergencies. She's no my big wee hag, Jeanie. She's our big wee hag, the hag of these hills like her granny. She tells the hills what they are. She has them in her bones, and I tell ye, Jeanie, there's power in her she doesn't dream of. But the hiver smells it. Aye, well, a drink's a drink, whomsoe'er you call her."
She waved the cup under Rob's nose. He looked away.
"Ach, this is no the time. My heart is heavy, woman."
Rob hung his head.
"Ach, Rob, I didn't want harm to come to the big wee girl, truly. But I cannae face thinking of you out there fighting this monster that cannae be killed. It's you I'm worried about, can you no see?" "Aye, I see. I'm your wife. Aye, I willna go if you see." "You mean it?" "I never breaked my word yet except to policemen. You'll abide by my word?" "Aye."
Suddenly Jeanie stood up.
"Rob Anybody Feagle, gang and save the big wee hag." "What? Just noo you said that was as your wife, Rob. Noo I'm talking as your kelder. So listen to me guid. Tak what men you need and gang to the mountains. See the big wee girl comes to nae harm, and come back safe yourself, that's an order. But I'm the kelder, Rob. I cannae run a clan with a big man pining, and the hills of our children need their hag."
There was something about the way she'd said
"children."
Rob wasn't the fastest of thinkers, but he always got there in the end.
"Aye, Rob. Soon I'll be birthing 7 sons."
"Oh." He didn't ask how she knew the number. Kelders knew.
"That's great. And 1 daughter. A daughter. That's wonderful good luck for a clan. Aye. So you've got something to come back for, Rob Anybody. And I beg ye, use your heed for something other than nutting folk."
So at dawn, Rob Anybody, watched with awe by his many brothers, wrote the word PLN on a scrap of paper bag and held it up.
"Plan, ye ken. And noo we have a plan. All we got to do is work out what to do. Noo ye ken all about hivers, lads. And this is like a suicide mission. So I'm asking, for volunteers."
Every Feegle over the age of 4 automatically put his hand up.
"Oh, come on! I'm taking no weigh-ins, so if ye's under 3 inches high, you're no coming. Except for ye, of course, awfully wee Billy Big Chin. Look, I'll take you, Duff Willie, and Big Jan. The rest of yous will settle this the traditional Feegle way. I'll take the last 50 men still standing."
He beckoned the chosen 3 to a corner of the mound, while the rest of the assembled Feegles squared up cheerfully.
"She's more'n 100 miles away,"
said Rob as the big fight started.
"We canna run it. You skunners got any ideas?" "Hamish can get there on his buzzard,"
said the big Jan, stepping aside as a cluster of punching, kicking Feegles rolled past.
"Aye, and he'll come too, but he canna take more'n 1 passenger." "Can we swim it?"
said Daft Wally.
"Swim it, you dufty! How?" "I was only trying to make a contribution." "The big wee hag left in a cart,"
said the big Jan.
"Aye, so?" "Well, maybe we could. Ach no, showing ourselves to hags is one thing, but no to other big jobs." "I've an idea," said
Awfully Wee Billy. Awfully Wee Billy Big Chin was the new Gonagle, the clan's bard and battle poet. He'd come with Jeanie from the Long Lake clan and was very young for a Gonagle, but he knew all the songs and could play the mouse pipes so sadly it would start to rain.
"Aye, lad, speak up." "We could disguise ourselves. There's an old story about a feud between the Three Peaks and the Windy River clans. The Windy River boys escaped by making a tatty bogle walk. The Three Peaks men thought it was a big job and kept out of its way."
The others looked puzzled, and Awfully Wee Billy remembered they were men of the chalk. They'd probably never seen a tatty bogle.
"A scarecrow. It's like a big job made of sticks with claws on to frighten the birdies away from the crops."
They listened as he explained how to make a human that would walk. Tiffany woke up, still alive, not chopped up. Unfamiliar birds were singing. She sat up and looked around the room. Her clothes had been neatly folded. The fossil and the lucky stone and the other things had gone from the chest of drawers. It was only after a frantic search that she found them back in the box in her suitcase. Right. Well, today she would get answers. She went downstairs. It had been dark last night, so she hadn't noticed the posters stuck up all down the stairs. They were from circuses, covered with clowns and animals and old-fashioned poster lettering. Thrills galore, hurry, hurry. Professor Monty Bladder's 3-ring circus and cabinet of curiosities. See the horse with his head where his tail should be. See the amazing dislocating Jack put a lion's head in his actual mouth. See the egress. The flying Pastrami brothers will defy gravity without a net. Wonder at Topsy and Tipsy, the astounding mind-reading act. See Clarence, the tap-dancing mule. And so it went on. They were strange things to find in a cottage in the woods. She went into the kitchen. Miss Level was sitting at the kitchen table, and so was Miss Level. There were, in fact, 2 of her, exactly alike.
Sorry,"
said the Miss Level on the right.
"I thought it best to get it over with."
"Oh, I see. You're twins."
"No,"
said the Miss Level on the left.
"I'm not. I'm a bit more complicated than that, because this might be a little difficult. I'm one person with 2 bodies,"
said the first Miss Level, and they spoke like players in a tennis match, slamming the words back and forth.
"I wanted to break this to you gently, because some people get upset by the idea and find it creepy or just plain
weird." The 2 bodies stopped. You mean you both—"
"No, there is no both," said the Miss Level on the right. "There's only me. I know it's hard, but I have a right hand and a right left hand, and a left right hand and a left hand. It's all me. If it helps, think of me as one person with 4 arms and 4 legs and 4 eyes."
All 4 watched Tiffany nervously. "And 2 noses."
"Right, you've got it."
"But one half of you, came to 2 shirts for me."
"Oh, yes, I can split up like that. I can go shopping and stay home at the same time. And now I think a cup of tea would do us both good."
Both Miss Levels stood up, and Tiffany watched one person make a cup of tea using 4 arms. The bodies stood side by side, passing things from hand to hand, moving kettles and cups and spoons in a sort of ballet.
"When I was a child, they thought I was twins," she said over one of her shoulders. "And it's amazing the tricks you can get up to when you've got 2 bodies. In the end, I ran away to join the circus."
"Topsy and Tipsy, the astounding mind-reading act?"
Miss Level's mouths opened.
"It was on the posters."
"Oh, yes, of course. You do notice things, don't you?"
"I know I wouldn't pay money to see the egress. It only means the way out."
"Ah, clever. Yes, Monty put that on a sign to keep people moving through the Believe It or Not tent. This way to the egress. Of course, people thought it was a female eagle or something, so Monty had a big man with a dictionary outside to show them that they got exactly what they paid for."
"And what did you do? Read your own mind?"
"That, yes, and with different wigs on, I was the stupendous Bahunkus sisters. I juggled plates."
Both of Miss Level watched Tiffany carefully.
"Do you still want to stay? The last 3 girls didn't. Some people find me slightly odd."
I'll stay. The thing that moves things about's a bit strange, though."
"Oh, Oswald."
"Oswald? An invisible man who can get into my bedroom?"
"Oh, no, I only call him Oswald. He isn't a man. He's an Ondergeist. You've heard of poltergeists?
Invisible spirits that throw things around?"
"Good. Well, an Ondergeist's the opposite. They're obsessive about tidiness. He keeps putting things away, and he's quite handy around the house."
"And he's a male spirit?"
"How would you tell? He's got no body."
The left Miss Level giggled when the right Miss Level said this. The effect was odd and, in a way, creepy.
"Well, we are getting on well," said the right Miss Level. "Is there anything more you want to know, Tiffany?"
"Yes, please. What do you want me to do? What do you do?" It turned out mostly that what Miss Level did was chores, endless chores. You looked in vain for broomstick tuition, spelling lessons, or pointy hat management. There were the goats, technically led by Stinky Sam, who had a shed of his own, but really led by Black Meg, the senior nanny, who patiently allowed Tiffany to milk her, then carefully and deliberately put a hoof in the bucket. And if you shouted, then she'd won, and she sniggered at you. Next, there were the bees. 12 hives. Miss Level made Tiffany wear a veil and gloves before she opened one.
"Good morning, Hive 3. This is Tiffany."
Tiffany half expected some horrible high-pitched buzz to pipe up "Good morning, Tiffany," but it didn't.
"You have to talk to your bees, you see. I chat with them most evenings, news, gossip, that sort of thing."
Then there was the big herb garden. Although it contained very little that you'd stuff a turkey with, there was a lot of work to be done collecting and drying them. Miss Level was big on herbs. Tiffany found there was more than chores, though. There was what Miss Level called filling what's empty and emptying what's full. Only one of Miss Level's bodies went out at a time, and filling what's empty and emptying what's full meant wandering the local villages and isolated farms and mostly doing medicine. Witches did a lot of midwifery too, which is a kind of emptying what's full, and certainly the basket Miss Level carried filled up more than it emptied. They'd walk past a cottage, and a woman would come scurrying out with a fresh loaf or a jar of pickles, even though Miss Level hadn't stopped there. "You do what you can," said Miss Level as they walked through the woods one morning, "and people give what they can when they can. Pretty soon people will be killing their pigs for the winter, and I'll get more brawn, ham, bacon and sausages turning up than a family could eat in a year." "And what do you do with it all?" "Store it." "But I store it in other people. What I don't need I take to those who don't have." "But I bet some people are too mean to pay." "Not pay. A witch never expects payment, and everyone's poor around here, but it all works out. Right, we're going to visit old Mr. Weavell again. He's 91, you know." Tiffany said, "Oh dear," inside. Most days included a visit to Mr. Weavell, and she dreaded it. His skin was paper-thin and yellowish, and he was always in the same old armchair, sitting bolt upright, wearing a suit that was shiny with age, in a tiny cottage that smelled of old potatoes. The first time she'd met him, he'd called her Mary, and his claw of a hand had grabbed her wrist with surprising force.
"I shan't be a burden on anyone," he said urgently. "I can pay my way. My boy Toby won't have nothing to worry about when I go. I want the proper funeral show. Black horses and plumes and the mutes and a knife and fork tea for everyone afterwards. Check my box, will you?"
Miss Level had pointed to an old wooden box under his chair, which turned out to be full of coins. It looked like a fortune, and for a moment she'd wished she had as much. Today, Miss Level gave Mr. Weavell a shave. Yesterday she'd cut his toenails, which was not a safe spectator sport. One smashed a window pane.
"Mary,"
he said as Tiffany nervously wiped the last bits of foam off him.
"Check my box, will you?"
Oh, yes, that was the ceremony every day.
"My boy Toby's coming to see I, Shatty."
"That's nice, Mr. Weavell." Miss Level plumped up his cushions. "We'll get the place nice and tidy then."
"He's done well for himself, you know. Said he'd see I was all right in my old age, but I told him I'd pay my way when I go. The whole thing, and tuppence for the ferryman too."
"Tuppence for the ferryman?" said Tiffany as they walked home.
"Some old people still believe that when you cross the river of death you have to pay the ferryman. But nobody seems to worry about it these days, though. Perhaps there's a bridge now."
"He's always talking about his funeral."
"Well, some old people are like that. They'd hate anyone to think they're too poor to pay for it. Mr. Weavell 'ud die of shame."
"It's very sad, him being all alone like that. Something should be done for him."
"Yes, we're doing it. And old Widow Tussie down the lane does his laundry and keeps an eye on him."
"What about this son he talks about?"
"Young Toby. Been dead for 15 years. And Mary, the daughter, died young. Mr. Weavell's very short-sighted and sees better in the past."
Tiffany didn't know what to reply except, "It shouldn't be like this."
"There isn't a way things should be. There's only what happens and what can be done. Mistress Weatherwax said you've to learn that witchcraft is mostly about doing quite ordinary things."
"And you do what she says?"
"I listen to her advice."
"Mistress Weatherwax is the head witch then, is she?"
"Oh, no, all witches are equal. We don't have head witches. That's quite against the spirit of witchcraft."
"Oh, I see."
"And besides,
Mistress Weatherwax would never allow it. Suddenly things were going missing around the chalk. Clothes vanished off washing lines. A pair of boots mysteriously disappeared from under the bed of nosy hinds. A pair of trousers, an old hat and a long coat belonging to abiding Swindell the ferret-keeper vanished, and the coat still had ferrets living in pockets. And who climbed through the bedroom window of Clem Doynes and shaved off his beard, which had been so long he could tuck it into his belt? Probably witches, people agreed. However, where the long green slopes of the chalk came down to the flat fields of the plain, there were big thickets of hawthorn, usually alive with birdsong, but this particular one was alive with...
"Ah, Rivens! Mind where you're putting your foot, you spavvy! I can't help it, it's no easy being a knee. Will you want to be doing here in the boots? It's fair raking." "Raking, is it? Try being in this pocket. Them ferrets ne'er got out to the lavvy. Crivens, will ye dafties no shut up? Oh, aye, hark at him, just 'cause ye're up in the heed. Who d'ye think ye are? I'm Rob Anybody, and I've had enough of the lot of yez." "OK, Rob, but we need more practice. We're walking like a fellow with nae bones and a serious case of the trots."
Suddenly there was a cry from where a lookout had been watching the road.
"Carts coming! Right, ye scunners!"
Rob shouted.
"Ye ken what to do? Pelvis, are ye ready?" "Aye, Rob." "Knees?" "Aye." "Feet?" "Aye." "Right. All together, boys. Walk."
Mr. Crabber the carter slowed the horse to a standstill when something stepped out into the road. It looked human, but walked as though its knees had been tied together, and it didn't really have a face. There was nothing much to see between the droopy hat brim and the turned-up collar of the coat, except a lot of beard. But from somewhere within the beard, a voice said,
"Ahem! Good day to ye, Carter. If you'll gie us me a lift."
The figure thrust out one gloved hand.
I'll gie ye this shiny gold coin."
The carter stared. It was quite a large coin. It had come from the treasure of the old dead king who was buried in the main part of the Feagles mound, and it was more money than he'd ever seen in his life.
"If sir would like to hop on the back, sir."
"Right ye are! Just a moment. This needs a wee bitty organising. OK, use hands grab the side of the cart. You lefty leg. Crivens, band. Get that right."
The hairy face turned to the carter.
"Sorry about this. I talked to my knees, but they didn't listen to me."
"Right, I have trouble with mine in the wet weather. Goose grease works."
The carter heard grunts behind him as the man hauled himself onto the cart.
"OK, let's go."
Mr. Crabber urged the horse into a walk.
"Can ye no go a wee bitty faster, my good man? We haven't got all day."
Well, sir, see them crates? I've got a load of eggs on."
There were crashes behind him.
"Hey, that was my—"
A hefty and smelly arm landed on the carter's shoulder.
"I've another gold coin for ye. Ye can gie faster noo, eh?"
"Oh, well, accidents happen, eh, sir?"
"Aye, and I'm in a big hurry to get to yon mountains."
"But I'm not the stagecoach, sir. You can catch that in 2 shirts. But not today, though."
"Why not?"
"On Wednesdays it runs early, sir, and this cart can only go so fast, and—"
"If I dinna catch yon coach, I'll gie ye the hiding of your life," growled the passenger. "But if I do catch yon coach, I'll gie ye 5 of them gold coins."
Mr. Crabber took a deep breath.
"Hi-ya! Giddy up, Henry!"
All in all, it seemed to Tiffany, most of what witches did really was very dull and, well, goody-goody. A little more excitement would be nice. Miss Level patiently showed her how to make a shambles, which could be made of more or less anything, provided it contained something alive, like a beetle or a fresh egg, but Tiffany couldn't get the hang of it. She only got a tangle dripping with egg, over and over. "What can I do?" she said. "Make an omelette?" Miss Level patted her on the back. "Perhaps you're trying too hard, but it'll happen one day." "Couldn't you make one I could use for a while?" "No, you have to make one for yourself there and then, right when and where you want to use it." "Why?" "To catch the moment," said the other part of Miss Level, coming in. Picking up a couple of twigs and taking a length of thread, she sat down at the table opposite Miss Level and 20 fingers working together made a shamble in seconds. "Of course it's helpful to have the right things in your pocket. I always carry a few sequins for the happy memories they bring back." Miss Level put all 4 hands into the threads and pulled. The threads took up a pattern. Miss Level peered into it. "Something's coming," she said. The stagecoach had left Two Shirts half full and was well out over the plains when the driver heard the screaming getting louder. The carter's wagon overtook them. "Stop! Stop! For pity's sake, stop!" yelled the carter. But there was no stopping Henry. He'd plodded along for years, being overtaken by 3-legged dogs. But now he was having the time of his life. He'd actually overtaken the stagecoach. Him, Henry. He only stopped because the stagecoach driver stopped first. Besides, there were a couple of mares pulling the coach whom he felt he'd really like to get to know. Find out when their day off was, what kind of hay they liked, that kind of thing. The carter's scarecrow-like passenger climbed unsteadily down and lurched towards the coach. "Sorry, we're full up," the driver lied. They weren't, but there was certainly no room for a thing like that.
"Ach, and there was me willing to pay with gold such as this here."
It waved a ragged glove in the air. Suddenly there was plenty of space, and to the annoyance of Henry, the coach set off again. A broomstick was heading through the trees, and a young witch was sitting on its side saddle, but she wasn't flying it very well. Clearly she was no good at turning corners, because sometimes she jumped off and pointed the stick in a new direction by hand. When she reached Miss Level's gate, she got off again and quickly tethered the stick to it with string. "Nicely done, Petulia Gristle!" Miss Level clapped all 4 hands. "You're getting quite good."
Thank you, Miss Level," said the girl, bowing. I've come to see if your new girl would like to come to the Sabbat tonight."
She was short, plump, permanently red-faced and slightly worried, and Tiffany noticed that she had occult jewellery everywhere. "Sabbat? Oh, one of your meetings. That would be nice, wouldn't it, Tiffany?" "Yes." Tiffany wasn't sure yet. "Yes, some of the girls meet up in the woods in the evenings. Petulia here works for old Mother Blackcap over in Sidling Without, specialises in pig diseases." Petulia gave Tiffany a worried smile. You can ride with me on the broomstick if you like." I'd rather not." Petulia looked relieved. Don't you have any beads or amulets or anything?" "No, sorry." You must have a shamble, surely." Can't get the hang of them." She hadn't meant the but around Petulia it was catching. A black dress, perhaps? I don't really like black. I prefer blue or green." Oh, well, you're just starting." Tiffany knew she was being unfriendly, and Petulia with her pink face was clearly a nice person, and it would be good to have someone her own age to talk to. "Yes," she said, "I know I've got a lot to learn. I'd love to come." The passengers inside the stagecoach sat huddled together on the seat opposite, watching the new traveller and trying not to breathe. The problem wasn't that he smelled of ferrets. Well, that was a problem, but the big problem was he talked to himself. That is, bits of him talked to other bits of him.
It's fair bogging down here. I'm telling ye, it's my turn to be up in the head. Ha! At least yous are all cushy in the stomach. It's the legs that has to do all the work.
At which the right hand said,
Blow this for a game of sodges. I'm going to stretch my legs.
And in a horrified silence, the other passengers watched one of the man's gloved hands drop off and walk around on the seat.
Well, it's nae picnic in the trousers neither. I'm going to let some fresh air in. Daft Wally, don't you dare.
And the passengers watched the trousers with terrible fascination. There was some movement, a couple of buttons popped, and a very small red-headed blue man stuck his head out. When he saw the people, he froze. They stared. His face widened into a mad smile.
Hooray, yous folks! Great!
Then he disappeared back into the trousers. A few minutes later, the coach stopped to change horses. When it set off again, it was minus the inside passengers. No, thank you, they'd catch the coach tomorrow. No, there was no problem waiting here in this delightful little town of Dangerous Corner. Thank you, goodbye. The coach set off again, lighter and somewhat faster, the reason probably to do with the heap of coins now in the driver's pocket. Tiffany walked through the woods, while Petulia flew unsteadily alongside, chattering nervously. It was a long walk, and Tiffany wasn't happy in the company of trees. She missed the horizons. She missed the sky. Everything was too close. So, what's the meeting about? To keep in touch. Anagramma says it's important to make contacts. Anagramma's the leader, is she? No, witches don't have leaders, Anagramma says. At last, as the sun was setting, they arrived at a clearing where someone had lit a fire. Badly. And they'd found that lying down to blow on it was not a good idea. A young witch was now flailing desperately at her burning pointy hat, watched by several interested spectators. Another, sitting on a log, said, "Dimity hubbub, that is literally the most stupid thing anyone has ever done anywhere in the whole world ever. You really are letting everyone down. Sorry, Anagramma." Everyone turned. "You're late, Petulia Gristle. Who's this?" You did ask me to bring Miss Level's new girl, Anagramma." Anagramma stood up. She was a head taller than Tiffany, and had a face that seemed to be built backwards from her nose, which she held slightly in the air. "This her? Well, let's have a look at you, new girl." Tiffany stepped forward. "What's your name?" "Tiffany Aching." "That's a funny name. Mine is Anagramma Hawkin. Anagramma works with Mrs. Earwig. But I intend to leave next year. Apparently I'm doing extremely well. So you're Miss Level's girl, are you? She's sad, complete amateur, hasn't a clue, just bustles about and hoops. Her last 3 girls all left very quickly. They said it was too weird trying to keep track of which one of her was which."
Which was which, said one of the girls cheerfully. Anyone can do that pun, Lucy Warbeck. It's not funny and it's not clever.
She turned back to Tiffany.
You haven't even dressed the part. Oh well, too late now. Gertrude Tiring, summon the world's four corners and open the circle, please.
Said Gertrude nervously. It was amazing how many people around Anagramma became nervous.
Oh, do I have to do everything? Try to remember, please. We've been through this literally 1,000,000 times.
I've never heard of the world's four corners, said Tiffany.
Really? Now there's a surprise. They're the directions of power.
But the world's round like a plate.
You have to imagine them,
Petulia whispered.
Why?
Anagramma rolled her eyes.
Because that's the way to do things properly. What are you best at?
Tiffany was a bit confused. She wasn't used to people like Anagramma.
Soft Nellies. It's a sheep cheese, quite hard to make.
She looked at the circle of blank faces and felt embarrassment rise inside her like hot jelly.
Anagramma meant what magic can you do best? Although Soft Nellies is good, said Anagramma with a cruel little smile. You have done some magic, haven't you?
Tiffany looked down at her boots. I don't know. I did throw the Queen of the Fairies out of my country.
Oh, really? The Queen of the Fairies, eh? How?
I'm not sure. I got angry with her.
Well, it helps to dream.
I don't tell lies, Tiffany mumbled, but no one was listening. Sullen and upset, she watched the girls open the corners and summon the circle, unless she'd got that the wrong way round. Anagramma stood with a big book open in her arms.
Now, you, Gertrude, go Widdershins. No, the other way. And Lulu, darling, where's Lulu? Get the shriven chalice. No, not that one, the one without handles. Lucy, hold the wand of the air a bit higher. Harrietta Bilk, is that the cauldron of the sea? Does it look like a cauldron of the sea? I don't think so, do you? What's that noise?
The girls looked down.
Dimity trod on the circlet of infinity, Anagramma.
The book slammed shut.
What is the point? What is the point? Do you want to spend the rest of your lives as village witches curing boils and warts for a cup of tea and a biscuit? Well, do you?
There was a shuffling among the huddled witches.
No, Anagramma.
She put the book down on the log. Tiffany looked at the cover. It read, The Higher Magic by Lettuce Earwig Witch.
Magic with a K? That's deliberate. We must distinguish the higher magic from the everyday sort. None of that mumbling in hedgerows for us. Proper sacred circles, spells written down. That's the way forward.
Well, I
really don't care what you think.
Anagramma turned to the group.
Well, we've completely lost the moment now. Do we all at least have something for the trials this year?
I'm doing the pig trick.
Well, you're nearly good at that.
What are witch trials? Said Tiffany.
Oh, tell her, Petulia.
Hesitantly, Petulia explained. The witch trials were quite an big event and were in Sheercliff this year. Ordinary people could come too, and there was a fair and sideshows, and in the afternoon witches from all over the mountains could show off a spell or something they'd been working on.
And is there a prize?
Oh no, it's all in a spirit of fun and good good sistership.
Huh, said Anagramma. Not even she will believe that. It's all a fix. Mistress Weatherwax always wins, whatever she does. And it's ignorant old women like her who keep witchcraft rooted in the past. She fools them all into thinking she's good.
but all she does is bully people and mess with their heads. She's half cracked. She didn't seem cracked to me."
Suddenly everyone looked at Tiffany. There was nothing for it but to go on.
Well, she was a bit stern, but quite polite. She didn't cackle.
"You've met her?"
"Yes."
"Was that before or after you kicked out the Fairy Queen?"
"After. She turned up on a broomstick."
"And congratulated you, I expect?"
"No, not really, but she seemed pleased." And then Tiffany said something really, really stupid. She said, "She did give me this hat." And all of them said with one voice,
"What hat?"
Petulia took her back to the cottage. She did her best assuring Tiffany that she believed her, but Tiffany knew she was only being nice. And Miss Level tried to talk to her as she ran upstairs, but she bolted her door, kicked off her boots, and lay on the bed with a pillow over her head to drown out the laughter echoing inside. They'd laughed at her. They'd said, "What hat?" And they'd laughed even more when she'd raised her hand to touch the invisible brim and hadn't found it. Downstairs, there was some muffled conversation between Petulia and Miss Level, and then the sound of the door closing as Petulia left. After a while there was a scraping noise as Tiffany's boots were dragged across the floor and arranged neatly under the bed. Oswald was never off duty. After another while the laughter died down, although she was sure it'd never go completely. She lay in the dark, staring at nothing. She missed the sounds and the silences of the chalk. She missed part of herself. She needed blue butterflies, the sounds of sheep and the big empty skies. But they were a long way away now. Too far. And perhaps she wasn't a witch at all. What had the virtual hat done for her? Perhaps the old woman had tricked her. Perhaps she should go home and make soft Nellies for the rest of her life. Outside it began to rain quite hard, and she heard the mutter of thunder. What would Granny Aching have done? Even folded in the wings of despair, she knew the answer to that. Granny Aching never gave up. She'd search all night for a lost lamb. She lay looking at nothing for a while. Yes, it had to be there. She lit a candle by the bed. This couldn't wait until morning. She had a little trick for seeing the hat. If you moved your hand behind it quickly, there was a brief blurriness to what you saw, as though the light coming through the invisible hat took a little more time. Well, if the hat was there, everything would be fine. It wouldn't matter what people thought. She stood in the middle of the carpet while the lightning danced outside and closed her eyes. While down in the garden, the apple tree branches flayed in the wind, the dream catchers and curse nets clashing and jangling. "See me," she said. The world went totally silent. It hadn't done that before. Tiffany tiptoed round until she knew she was opposite herself and opened her eyes again. And there she was, and the hat, as clear as it had ever been, and the image of Tiffany below it, a young girl in a green dress, opened its eyes, smiled at her and said, "We see you, now we are you." Tiffany tried to shout, "See me not," but there was no mouth to shout. Lightning struck nearby, the window blew in, the candle flame flew out in a streamer of fire and died, and then there was only darkness and the hiss of the rain. Rain had soaked into the rug when Tiffany woke up. Damp daylight spilled into the room. She got up and closed the window. Okay. It hadn't been a dream. Something strange had happened. Her fingertips were tingling. She felt full of life. She was going to take charge, take control of her life. Get up and go had got up and come. She went to put on her boots, then stared at them. No, they wouldn't do. Not now. She got the shiny new ones out of her case. She found both of Miss Level out in the wet garden in her nightie, sadly picking up bits of dream catcher and fallen apples. "Very strange, Tiffany. That storm seemed a touch magical to me. All the curse nets seem to have exploded. I suppose you girls weren't doing anything odd last night, were you?" "No, Miss Level." "Because, you see, I've searched the house and Oswald seems to have gone. He's very sensitive to atmospheres. Go well. See to the goats, will you, dear?" But today, when Tiffany looked inside the shed, the goats were huddled at the far end. They panicked, nostrils flaring as she went towards them. But she grabbed Black Meg by her collar. The goat twisted and fought her as she dragged it to the milking stand, and she thought, "Let's show this creature who's in charge." She picked up the milking parlour broom. Black Meg's slot eyes widened in fear, and wham! It hit the milking stand. Tiffany hadn't intended to miss. She'd wanted to give Meg the wallop it richly deserved, but somehow the stick had twisted in her hand. The goat stood still as a log. Tiffany milked her, took the pail into the dairy, weighed it and chalked up the amount on the slate by the door. Altogether, the 10 goats gave 3 gallons, which was pretty pitiful. Tiffany chalked this up without enthusiasm. What was the point of all this? She could be doing anything. She looked down at the scrubbed wooden table. Someone had written on the wood in chalk, "Help me." And the chalk was still in her hand. "But Julia's come to see you, dear," said Miss Level behind her. Tiffany turned guiltily. "What? Why?" The dumpy girl was standing very nervously on the cottage doorstep. I thought I ought to see how you are." "Petulia, you're not clever. Help me. And you're too fat." Tiffany slammed the door, went back to the dairy and stared at the bowls of milk and curds. Good with cheese. Tiffany Aching, brown hair, good with cheese. Of all the things people could be in the world, did she really want to be known simply as a dependable person to have around rotted milk? She spat on her hand and rubbed out the chalked "Help me" as the door was pushed open. Both of Miss Level was there. "I have to say, Tiffany, that I think you were very nasty to Petulia." She went off crying. Then she stared at Tiffany's face. "Are you all right, child?" Yes, fine." "Then we'd better leave soon. There's a lot to do today. There's Slapwick's leg, the Grimley baby, and Mr. Weaval's lunch to cook. Oh, and Mrs. Fanlight's near her time, and so is Miss Hoblow again. Come on, let's have a smile. It's going to be a full day. It's really hard to fit it all in. Really it is." "You stupid woman," Tiffany thought as she trailed after Miss Level into the cottage. There was always lots to do, but it never made any difference. They went from one grubby, smelly home to another, ministering to greedy, lazy, dumb people too stupid to use soap, drinking tea from cracked cups, gossiping with old women with fewer teeth than toes. It made her feel ill, a feeling like a thunderstorm in her head. Then the daydreams began. She saw her reflection in the window. She was a tiger with huge fangs. Miss Level saw her face. "Is there something wrong? You look dreadful." Ferns everywhere, big ferns, and big things like cows made out of lizards. She turned a wide, mirthless smile onto Miss Level, who took a step back. "You can eat them." She blinked. "What's happening?"
I don't know.
Oh, they laughed at me when I said I could trap one. Well, who's laughing now? Tell me that, eh?
Miss Level's expression turned into something like panic.
That didn't sound like your voice. That sounded like a man. Do you feel all right?
Feel crowded.
Crowded?
Strange memories. Help me. Tiffany looked at her arm. It had scales on, now hair. Now it was smooth and brown and holding a scorpion sandwich.
Tiffany, can you hear me?
Miss Level's voice seemed a long way away.
You're delirious. Now just sit down and wait there.
Strange images were floating around Tiffany's mind, fragments of memories, and one voice that was her own, small and defiant and getting fainter.
You're not me! Someone help me! Right, now drink this, please.
Tiffany drank the water, and out of the corner of her eye saw Miss Level weaving string around an egg.
Now then, let's just see what we can see.
The shamble exploded into fire and smoke.
Oh, Tiffany!
Miss Level frantically waved the smoke away.
Are you all right?
Tiffany stood up slowly. Yes, now I'm all right. I've been wasting my time, Miss Level.
What?
Watch this. She pointed a finger. A wooden spoon rose from the table, began to spin faster and faster, until with a cracking sound it broke into splinters.
Why do we crawl in the dirt, Miss Level? Why do we amble around with herbs and bandage smelly old men's legs? Help me! Getting paid with eggs and stale cakes. Why don't we use magic?
Tiffany, dear, we all go through this.
Yes? Well, I'm going out.
Tiffany slammed the door behind her. Miss Level's broomstick was leaning against the wall. She stared at it, her mind on fire. Then she grabbed it, swung a leg over it, and found that her other foot stuck to the ground as though nailed there. The broomstick swung around wildly as she tried to pull it up, and when the boot was finally tugged off the ground, turned over so that Tiffany was upside down. This is not the best position in which to make a grand exit. She said quietly, I am not going to learn you. You are going to learn me, or the next lesson will involve an axe. The broomstick turned upright, then gently rose. Right, said Tiffany. There was no fear this time, only impatience. As the stick drifted away, there was whispering in the long grass of the garden.
Ah, we're too late, Rob. That was the hiver, that was. Aye, but did ye no see that foot? It's near one yet. Our hag's in there somewhere. She's fighting it. Wally, stop trying to grab them apples. But, Rob, no one can fight a hiver. 'Tis like fighting yourself. The more you fight, the more it'll tackle ye. Wash out your mouth wi' hedgehog pea, Big Yan. That isn't going to happen. Grivens, here comes the big hag.
Half of Miss Level stepped out into the ruined garden and stared up at the departing broomstick, shaking her head. Daft Wally was still out in the open, where he'd been trying to snag a fallen apple. He turned to flee, but ran straight into a pottery garden gnome. And when it comes to choosing between running and fighting, a Feegle doesn't think twice. He doesn't think at all.
What you grinning at, Bal?
He demanded of the fat, chubby-cheeked figure in front of him. He was far too angry to hear the click of the garden gate and the soft tread of approaching footsteps.
So you reckon you're the big man 'cause she's got a fishing rod?
He grabbed a pink pointy ear in each hand and aimed his head at what turned out to be quite a hard pottery nose. It smashed anyway, but it did cause the little man to stagger in circles. Too late, he saw Miss Level bearing down on him from the doorway. He turned to flee right into the hands of, also, Miss Level. Her fingers closed around him. "I'm a witch, you know, and if you don't stop struggling this minute, I'll subject you to the most dreadful torture. You know what that is?" Daft Wally shook his head in terror. The rest of the Feagles listened so hard it hurt. "Well, I'll let you go without giving you a taste of the 20-year-old macabre single malt in my cupboard." Rob Anybody leapt up.
"Ah, Riven's mistress, what a thing to taunt a body wi'! You're a cruel hag indeed to—"
He stopped. Miss Level was smiling. The Knack-Mack Feagle respected witches, and this one had brought out a big loaf and a whole bottle of whisky on the table for the taking. "Of course I'd heard of you," Miss Level said, watching them eat, which is not something to be done lightly. "And you say you watch over Tiffany's farm?"
"Aye, that we do. She's the hag o'er hills like her granny. It's through her the hills know they're alive."
"And a hiver is—" Rob hesitated.
"Dunno the proper haggin' way of talking about it. Awfully wee boy, you know them lang words."
Billy swallowed.
"It's like a mind wi' you a body, mistress, except it doesn't think. And what it does, it creeps in you ken. It looks for folks wi' power and strength, kings, magicians, leaders. And they say that way back in time, afore there was people, it lived in beasts, the strongest beast wi' big, big teeths. And when it finds ye, it creeps into your head and it becomes ye."
"Becomes you?"
"Aye, wi' your memories and all. Only it changes ye. It gives ye power, but it takes ye over. And the last wee bit of ye that still is ye, well, that'll fight and fight, maybe, but it'll dwindle and dwindle until it's all gone and ye're just a memory."
The Feagles watched Miss Level. They were entirely unamazed by a woman with two bodies. "But why Tiffany? She's not powerful."
"She has the power of the land in her."
"But she doesn't do any magic. She can't even make a shamble."
"Hey, any of yous lads seen the hag do any haggling lately?"
Rob demanded. There were a lot of shaking heads. Then the big Yan raised a hand. "Yes?"
"Well, I dinna know if it was proper haggling, mistress, but me and nearly Big Angus saw her doing something odd. It was when she got her new dress and her new hat."
The Feagle next to him nodded.
"And very bonny she looked, eh? Aye, she was standing in the middle of the flare, and she said, what was it? 'See me.' Aye, then after a wee while, we heard her voice say, 'See me not.'"
"She said, 'See me'?"
"Aye, then, 'See me not,' and between times she stayed very still like a statue. And we reckon she was trying to throw her voice, so it sounds like it's coming frae somewhere else, ye ken."
"Throw her voice?" Miss Level's brows wrinkled. "Why did you think that?"
"'Cause when she said 'see me not,' it sounded like it was no coming frae her, and her lips didn't move."
"Tell me, when she was standing there, was she moving at all?"
"Only breathing very slow, mistress."
"Were her eyes shut?"
"Aye."
Both of Miss Level stared at them. So she walked out of her own body. There's not one witch in 100 who can do that. That's borrowing, that is. It's putting your mind somewhere else. You have to learn how to protect yourself before ever you try it. She must have walked out of her own body and left it there for anything to take over. The little fool. Something that called itself Tiffany flew across the treetops. It looked like Tiffany. It peered from her eyes, tried to hear with her own ears, think with her own brain, an interesting brain. It had everything it needed to be Tiffany, except Tiffany. A hiver took you over until there was no room left, except it was having trouble. It had flowed through her like a dark tide, but there was a place, tight and sealed, that was still closed, the tiny part of her that was me. She brought the broomstick in low over the trees and landed neatly on a lawn. There really was nothing to it, she decided. You just had to want it to fly. Then she was sick again. Ridiculous. She wasn't frightened of flying any more, but her stupid stomach was. She wiped her mouth, turned to the stick, said, "Stay," and marched across the lawn to the house. It was a lot grander than Miss Level's cottage. She knocked at the door and waited. It was opened by a tall, thin woman in black, but a very decorative black, all lacy and ruffled, and set off with more silver jewellery than Tiffany imagined could exist. Some of her fingers had sort of silver finger gloves, designed to look like claws. And she was wearing a pointy hat, taller than any Tiffany had ever seen. It had stars on it, and silver hat pins glittered. Before she spoke, she pointedly looked at the door to see if the knocking had made a mark. "Well, bless all in this house. What? Oh yes, favourable rune shine on this our meeting. Well, I've come to see Anagramma, Mrs. Earwig. It's pronounced Arwidge. Sorry. Well, you'd better come in. Come." It was a strange house. You couldn't doubt that a witch lived in it, and not only because every door frame had a tall pointy bit cut out of the top of it to allow Mrs. Earwig's hat to pass through. The room Tiffany was led into had suns and moons on the floor tiles, and big paintings with lots of crescent moons, and young women with frankly not enough clothes on, and big men with horns and, not just horns. "I'll tell Anagramma you're here," said Mrs. Earwig, pronounced Arwidge. "Do not kick the chair legs, please." She went out. Tiffany looked round. The hiver looked around and thought, "I've got to be the strongest. When I am the strongest, I shall be safe. But that one is weak. She thinks you can buy magic." "Oh, it's you," said a sharp voice. "The cheese girl." "Hello. I suppose you've come to beg to be allowed to join after all, have you?" "No." The hiver had been many things, including a number of wizards, and Anagramma was drinking a glass of milk. "But I might let you join me. Enjoying that?" The glass of milk turned into a bunch of thistles. Anagramma dropped it hurriedly. When it hit the floor, it became a glass of milk again and shattered. Anagramma stared. "You know they say the power comes? Well, it's come to me." Tiffany concentrated. She didn't know where this was coming from, but it seemed to know exactly what to do. Anagramma rose off the floor and, to Tiffany's delight, started to cry. "You said we should use our power, and you're a girl with her head screwed on right. Wouldn't it be awful if it got screwed on wrong? Now, do you want to be my friend, or do you want to be in my way?" Tiffany waved a hand. Her prisoner dropped to the ground. "I need your help." Why?" "To start with, where can I get a dress like yours?" Anagramma's eyes lit up. "Oh, Zack strong in the arm, over in Salad Without, everything for the modern witch." "Then I want everything." "But he'll want paying. He's a dwarf." "Oh, I know where I can get money. I'll meet you, please help me, here this afternoon, and—" "What was that?" "I said I'd stop me, meet you here this—" There it was again, a sort of odd echo in your voice, like two people trying to talk at once. "Oh, that," said the hiver. "That's nothing. It'll stop soon." Zack-Zack's low-ceilinged shop had plenty to spend your money on. There were wands, mostly metal, some of rare woods. There were bottles of coloured glass in the potions section and ornamented shambles hung from the ceiling, much prettier than the working ones Tiffany had seen. And there were even stones for looking into. "Crystal balls," said Anagramma as Tiffany picked the biggest one up. "I should be very careful. They're very expensive." Tiffany saw Zack-Zack move from his counter, ready to rush forward with a bill if she dropped it. Said Anagramma. Tiffany tossed the ball over her shoulder.
"Oh, Tiffany," said Anagramma.
"That was the finest quartz,"
shouted Zack-Zack. He rushed past them to where the shattered ball did not lie in very expensive fragments. He turned to Tiffany, who was spinning the crystal globe on the tip of her finger. "Quickness of the hand deceives the eye."
"But I heard it smash."
"Deceives the ear, too." Tiffany put the ball back on its stand and pointed. "I'll take that necklace, that one, the one with the cats, that ring, and three of... what are these?" A book of night," said Anagramma. "A sort of magical diary. You write down what you're working on." Tiffany picked up the leather-bound book, which had an eye set in heavier leather on the cover. It rolled to look at her. "Whose eye was it? Anyone interesting?"
"I get the books from the Unseen University. They're not real eyes."
"It just blinked."
"Yes, very clever, the wizards. Shall I wrap it?"
"Yes. Wrap everything. And now, can anyone hear me? Show me the clothes department," where there were hats. There are fashions in witchery. The traditional upright cone black, the countrywoman, inside pockets waterproof, the cloudbuster, low drag coefficient for broomstick use. Tiffany chose the tallest. It was more than 2 feet high and had big stars sewn on it.
"Ah, the skyscraper for the witch on the way up."
Zack-Zack bustled around, opening drawers.
"Many ladies like a cloak with that. Now, we currently have very limited supplies just in of the Zephyr Billow. Very rare, black as coal and thin as a shadow. Completely useless for keeping you warm or dry, but looks fabulous in even the slightest breeze. Observe."
He held up the cloak and blew gently. It billowed out horizontally. "Oh, yes," breathed Anagramma. "I'll take it. I shall wear it to the witch trials."
"Well, if you win, be sure to tell everyone you bought it here."
"When I win, I'll tell them I got it at a considerable discount."
"Oh, I don't do discounts,"
said Zack-Zack as loftily as a dwarf can manage. Tiffany stared at him, then picked up one of the most expensive wands from the display.
"That's a number 6, whispered Anagramma. "Mrs. Arwidge has one."
"Yes, I see it's got runes on it."
"Well, of course."
Something about the way Tiffany said runes made Zack-Zack go pale. "They're in Ogham." Tiffany smiled nastily at Zack-Zack. "An ancient language of the dwarfs. And shall I tell you what they say? They say, 'Oh, what a wally is waving this.'"
"Look, don't you take that lying tone with me, young lady. I'm not standing for this. Brian!"
There was a rustling from the bead curtains at the back of the shop, and a wizard appeared. He had long, flowing robes with stars and magical symbols on them. But his beard was ragged, wispy, and not very clean. He was smoking a cigarette and had a tea mug in his hand. It was chipped, and on it were the words, "You don't have to be magic to work here, but it helps." "Yeah?"
"This young lady is being awkward."
Now then..." Brian put down his mug and looked at Tiffany. We Don't want any trouble, do we?"
"Brian's been to Unseen University," said Zack. "Got a degree. Brian, these young ladies need showing out."
"Now, do what Mr. Strong in the Arm says, there's good kids. Push off, right?" Tiffany smiled. "Brian, if you've studied wizardry, then you know about conservation of mass, don't you? I mean, what really happens when you turn someone into a frog?"
I'd like to see you turn someone into a frog."
"Wish granted." Tiffany waved the wand. Brian started to say, "Look, when he said I'd been to university," but he ended up saying,
"Brock."
Take the eye away from Tiffany, up through the shop, high above the village, until the landscape spreads out in a patchwork of fields, woods and mountains. Now let the eye fall on this wood, this clearing, this cottage. There's nothing on the walls but whitewash, nothing on the floor but cold stone. This is the house of a life peeled to the core. Upstairs, an old woman in faded black is lying on a narrow bed. Her eyes are shut, her hands crossed on her chest, her mouth is open. But there is a card on a string around her neck which reads, "I ain't dead." Suddenly bees pour in through the window urgently, as though driven by a gale. They land on the still old woman until her head and shoulders are a boiling mass of tiny brown bodies. And then, as one insect, they rise in a storm and pour away into the outside air. Mistress Weatherwax sat bolt upright and said, For a moment her eyes seemed to have many facets, just like a bee. Then she stuck a finger into her mouth, rootled around, and pulled out a struggling bee. She shooed it out of the window. "So," she said, "she's learnt how to borrow, has she? Or she's been borrowed?" Anagramma fainted. Zack stared, too afraid to faint. Something went gloop, gloop above them. "You see," said Tiffany, "a frog weighs only a few ounces. Brian weighs, 120 pounds. So to turn someone big into a frog, you've got to find something to do with the bits you can't fit in, right?" She bent down and lifted up the pointy wizard's hat on the floor. "Happy, Brian?" A small frog, squatting in a heap of clothes, looked up. But Zack was looking at the thing that went gloop, gloop. It was like a large pink balloon full of water wobbling gently against the ceiling.
"You've killed him."
"No, that's just spare Brian."
About this discount. 10%?
90, did I hear you say? Think quickly, the spare Brian is getting heavy.
Listen, keep it all for free. Just don't let him splash, please.
A 90% discount will be fine. I'd like you to stay in business.
Yes. Now please put him back.
Zack dropped to his knees, which wasn't far.
Please, he's not really a wizard. He only did evening classes there in fretwork. Don't hurt him, please.
Tiffany waved a hand. There was a moment even more unpleasant than the one which had ended up with the spare Brian bumping against the ceiling. Then the whole Brian stood there, blinking. "What happened?" Then there was a groan from Anagramma. She opened her eyes, saw Tiffany, and tried to back away. "Please, don't do that to me, please!" Tiffany pulled her to her feet. "But Anagramma, you're my friend. We're all friends. Isn't that nice? Please, stop me!" Miss Level found she rather liked the Feagles. There was something unsquashable about them. So, Mr. Anybody, what exactly is it you propose to do?
What?
Well, you came rushing all this way to save Tiffany from a creature that can't be seen, touched, smelled or killed. What did you intend to do when you found it? Rob scratched his head.
Well, generally, we muck it up as we go along.
Yes, but the creature's inside her head.
We can get inside her head if we have to.
Miss Level's face was a picture. 2 pictures. Inside her head?
Aye, no problemo.
You go in through the ears?
No, mistress, they're too small, said awfully wee Billy. But we can move between worlds, you ken. We're fairy folk.
And?
We can get into dreams, you see, and what's a mind but another world of dreaming?
No, I must forbid that. I can't have you running around inside a young girl's head. I mean, you're fully, you're men.
But the hiver's in there, mistress.
And you said you can't do anything about it.
Aye, but she might. She's a bonny fighter when she's roused. If we can only track her down, find the wee bit of her that's still her. You see, mistress, a mind's like a world itself, and she'll be hiding in it somewhere, trying not to let yon beast find her, and it'll be hunting her all the time, trying to break her down.
Miss Level began to look hunted herself. 50 small faces, full of worry, hope and broken noses, looked up at her. And she knew she didn't have a better plan, or even a PLN. Miss Level was 2 bags of nerves when Tiffany finally arrived back. Where have you been, dear? Out. Doing what? Nothing. You've been shopping, I see. Yes. Who with? Nobody. Tiffany swept upstairs.
Well, that could have gone better,
said Rob. Feagles started to appear everywhere in the room. But she looked so different. She moved differently. And those clothes and those bags. Where could she have got the money? She stopped, and both of Miss Level spoke at once. Oh, no!
Surely not. She wouldn't have, would she?
Oh, dear, I must go down to the village and check. One of her ran to the door. Well, at least she's brought the broomstick back. The Miss Level who stayed clenched and unclenched her fists nervously. I'm nearly there. Mr. Weavel's asleep. I'll ease the box out quietly, and if she's taken his money, I'm going to be so angry. It was a good hat, Tiffany thought, as tall as Mrs. Earwig's, and the stars gleamed. Packages covered the bed, and she pulled out one of the lace-covered black dresses and the cloak. She really liked the cloak. She twirled in it. It floated. It billowed. Then the door was flung open. One of Miss Level stood there, trembling with rage. Listen! Did you steal, Mr.? The hiver turned. The hiver struck. The hiver killed. It's bad enough being dead. Waking up and seeing a knack-mack Feagle standing on your chest, peering intently at you from an inch away, only makes things worse. Miss Level groaned. She was lying on the floor.
This one's still alive right enough.
Miss Level blinked one set of eyes. What happened to me?
Weel, you've had a wee accident. You're a wee bitty deed.
Through the mist of something that wasn't exactly pain, Miss Level heard Rob Anybody say to someone,
I was breaking it to her gently.
It's as though part of me is a long way off.
You're right there.
Then some memories bobbed to the surface of the thick soup in Miss Level's mind. She froze in horror. Tiffany killed me. That black figure turned. Her expression was horrible.
Ach, that was no Tiffany, that was the hiver. But it didn't remember ye had twa bodies.
Miss Level pushed herself upright. It wasn't pain, she felt, but the ghost of pain. How did I die?
Well, there was like an explosion. Purple smoke and that. Not messy, really.
Well, that's one small mercy, anyway.
She's all mithered in her head,
whispered awfully wee Billy.
Tuck it gently, eh?
How do you manage with only one pair of hands and feet? Said Miss Level dreamily. Being in only one place all the time. How do people manage? It's impossible. Miss Level sagged back. She shut her eyes.
Mistress, we need ye.
Need? Oh, everyone needs a witch.
Mistress, ye canna pass out, no.
But I'm very, very weary.
Mistress, the big wee hag's lying on the floor like a dead person, but cold as ice and sweating like a horse. She's fighting the beast inside her, and she's losing.
Rob peered into Miss Level's face.
Ach, to hell with it, she's swooned. Come on, lads.
Feagles are immensely strong for their size, but it still took 10 of them to carry Miss Level up the narrow stairs to Tiffany's room. Tiffany lay on the floor. Sometimes a muscle twitched. Miss Level was propped up like a doll.
How are we going to bring the big hag round? Said the big Yan. I heard ye has to put someone's head between their legs, said Rob.
Daft Wally drew his sword.
Sounds a bit drastic to me, but if someone'll hold her steady...
Miss Level opened her eyes, which was just as well. She smiled a strange, happy little smile. Oh, fairies. She focused unsteadily. Very ugly fairies. Her head slumped again. Rob sighed and turned to the unconscious Tiffany.
Grivens, it does me nae good to see the poor wee thing like this. Rob,
said Daft Wally.
Aye? How are we going to get into her head? There's got to be something to guide us in. Aye, Willie, and I can what? See this necklet?
He reached up. The silver horse hung there, amid the amulets and dark glitter.
Something made her keep this, so 'tis important to her, and it'll be in her head too. That was a present from that son of the Baron.
Daft Wally scratched his head.
But I thought she thought he was a big pile of jobies. Ah, weel, no man kens the workings of the female mind. OK, we'll follow the horse. All we need do is front a wheelstone on it, and it'll take us right where she is.
From Fairies and How to Avoid Them by Miss Perspicacia Tick. No one knows exactly how the Nakmak Feagles step from one world to another. Apparently, they throw back their shoulders, thrust out one leg straight ahead of them, wiggle the foot, and are gone. This is known as the craw step, and the only comment on the subject by a Feagle is, "It's all in the ankle movement, ye ken." The sky was midnight black, even though the sun hung at just past noon, lighting the landscape as brilliantly as a hot summer day. This was the landscape of Tiffany Aching's mind. The Feagles looked around. There seemed to be downland underfoot, rolling and green.
She really does hold the soul of the land in her head, whispered awfully wee Billy. Aye, 'tis so. But there's nae ships, nae birdies. Maybe something scared them awa',
said Daft Wally. Indeed, stillness and silence ruled here.
OK, lads, let's find the big wee hag.
They stepped forward like ghosts. The land rose slightly ahead of them to some kind of earthworks. They climbed 2 long mounds in the turf, which made a sort of cross.
"I dinna like this, Rob," said a Feagle. "It's too quiet." "Aye, slightly sane, Georgie." "You are my sunshine, my only..." "Daft Wally!"
The singing stopped. They moved on again. And then they found the horse. But here it was not carved into the hillside, but spread out before them. They stared at it.
"Awfully way, Bully!"
Rob beckoned the young Gonigal to him.
"What's this? She knows the chalk. Why is it here? It shouldn't be on top of the hills." "Serious headlands, Mr. Rob. I can't work it out yet." "Rob!"
The big Yan hurried up. He'd been scouting ahead.
"You'd better come and see this."
On top of a round hill was a 4-wheeled shepherding hut with a curved roof and a chimney for the pot-bellied stove. Inside, the walls were covered with the yellow and blue wrappers from hundreds of packets of Jolly Sailor tobacco. The back of the door was covered with chalk marks where Granny Aching had counted sheep and days, and there was a narrow iron bedstead made comfortable with old fleeces and feed sacks.
"Awfully way, Billy! Do ye have the understanding of this?"
The young Gonigal looked worried.
Ye ken I'm no very experienced at this. Do your best, laddie."
Billy looked out of the shed door and took a deep breath.
"Well, I think we're in the soul and centre of her. This is a bit of her memory, the place where she's always felt safe. I think she's hiding somewhere close like a hunted creature, and I'm frightened for her, frightened to my boots." "Why?" "Because I've been watching the shadows. The sun's moving, slipping down the sky." "Aye, well, that's what the sun does. Nay, ye dinna understand. That's no the sun of the big world. That's the sun of her soul."
The Feagles looked at the sun and the shadows.
"She'll die when night comes. There's worser things than death, Mr. Rob. The hiver will squeeze this place when it finds it, leave no more room for it, and the night will come, and then it'll have her, head to toe. Rab, I ha' an idea."
Everyone looked at Daft Wally. He was twisting his hands nervously.
"Ye ha' an idea? Aye. What is this place, if it's no truly her ain place, her ain turf? If she canna fight the creature here, she cannot fight it anywhere." "Aye, but it doesn't need to come here," said Billy. "As she grows weaker, this place will fade away." "Oh, Crivens." "No, Daft Wally is right," said Rob.
My man's got to use his heed for something other than nuttin' folk, Jeanie had said. He stared around the hut.
"This is her safe place. Here she has the power, but 'twill be a jail house for her unless she fights the monster. She'd be locked in here watching her life gang down the cludgy. So we'll fetch the beast in against its will, and here it will die."
The Feagles cheered. They weren't sure what was going on, but they liked the sound of it.
"How?"
said Billy.
"Ach, ye had to gang and ask that, didn't ye? And I was doing sae well."
He turned. There was a scratching noise on the door above him. Freshly chalked letters were appearing one by one, as if an invisible hand were writing them.
"Jan's words! She's trying to tell us something. Yes, they say sheep's wool, turpentine, Jolly Sailor."
Billy looked at Rob.
"Aye, well, Anyone can read it, but ye's got to be geed to have the meaning o' it." "And what's that?" "The meaning, Gonagle, is that yous are gonna go stealing."
There was another cheer from the Feagles. They recognised that word all right.
"Daft Wally?" "Aye. Ye'll be in charge. Ye've got the brains o' a beetle, but at the thieving ye hae no equal. Fetch turpentine, fresh ship wool, and some jolly sailor baccy. The hiver must smell them. It'll bring it here, and ye'd best be quick, because that sun is moving down the sky. Ye'll be stealing frae time itself."
Daft Woolley's face crinkled into a frown.
"But ye're the leader." "No, someone's got to stay wi' her. I'll no I'd said we left her to die alone."
He pointed.
"No, look at the sun, will ye? It's moved since we've been talking. Get moving, ye scunners!"
He raised his sword, growled, and they fled. Then he laid down his sword and sat on the step of the shepherding hut to watch the sun. And after a while, he became aware of something else. Hamish the aviator gave Miss Level's broomstick a doubtful look as it hung a few feet above the ground. The bundle on his back contained his parachute, although technically it was the para-drawers, since it was made of string and an old pair of Tiffany's best Sunday drawers, well washed. He had a feeling it, or they, were going to be needed.
"It's got no feathers. Look, we're in a hurry,"
said Daft Wally.
"You're the only one who knows how to fly. A broomstick isn't flying, it's magic. I dinna ken that stuff."
But the big Yan had already thrown a piece of string over the stick and was climbing up. Other Feagles followed. Firmly tied to the bristles was a bundle with a battered hat and the stolen beard on top of it.
"Besides, how do they steer these things? Ah, ye'll learn as we go."
So, moments later, Hamish sighed, pulled his goggles over his eyes, and put a hand on a shiny area of stick in front of him. Gently, the stick moved through the air. There was a cheer from the Feagles. At least the extra weight meant the stick end was pointing up, towards a gap in the trees.
"Can ye no make it go faster?"
said Daft Wally. Carefully, Hamish touched the shiny area again. The stick shuddered, then shot upwards, trailing a noise very like "Ah!" In the silent world of Tiffany's head, Rob Anybody picked up his sword and crept across the darkening turf. There was something moving. A tiny thorn bush, growing so fast that its twigs visibly moved. Its shadow danced on the grass. Rob stared. It had to mean something. And he remembered what the old Kelder had told them when he'd been a wee boy. Once the land had been all forests. There hadn't been much life in them. It had been dark as the bottom of the sea in there. Then the big jobs came, cut down the trees and let the sun in. Grass grew in the clearings. Sheep were brought in, which ate the grass, and also what grew in the grass, tree seedlings. And so the dark forests died. But the turf lived in the sun, with its grasses, flowers, birds, and insects. What looked like a green desert at a distance was a tiny, thriving, roaring jungle.
"Ah!"
Rob said.
"So that's your game, is it? Well, you're not tucking over in here too."
He chopped the spindly thing with his sword and stood back. A rustling behind him made him turn. There were more saplings unfolding. He looked across the grass and saw 100 tiny trees beginning their race for the sky. But worried though he was to his boots, Rob Anybody grinned. The sun was going down, the shadows were moving, the turf was dying, and he charged.
"Ah!"
What happened during the Knack-Knack-Feagle's search for the right smell was remembered by several witnesses. One was number 95, a ram, but all he remembered was a sudden noise in the night and a draughty feel on his back. That was about as exciting as it got for number 95. He went back to thinking about grass. Then there was Mildred Pusher, age 7, the daughter of the shepherd who owned number 95. One day, when she'd grown up and become a grandmother, she told her grandchildren about the night she came downstairs by candlelight for a drink of water and heard voices under the sink.
And what do you think? The cupboard under the sink was full of fairies, and one said, "Would you mind telling us where the turpentine is, would you?" So I told them outside in the barn, and they were gone. And what were the fairies like, Grandma?
One of the grandchildren asked.
Definitely smelly. And after they'd gone, there was a sound like,
The people in the king's legs, there were lots of king's heads or king's arms, and the owner had spotted a gap in the market, looked up as the door burst open.
"Good night to you, fellow big jobs."
The room fell horribly silent. Awkwardly, legs going in every direction, a scarecrow figure wove unsteadily towards the bar and grabbed it thankfully.
"A huge wee drop of your finest whisky, me fine barman fellow,"
it said from under the hat.
"and an ounce of jolly sailor."
"Sorry, sir. Very popular jolly sailor. We've sold out." The figure turned to the rest of the room.
"OK, a handful of gold to the first scunner who gives me a pipeful of jolly sailor."
A hand sagged into a coat pocket, came out jerkily, and slammed ancient gold coins onto the bar. The room erupted. Tables scraped, chairs overturned. The scarecrow man grabbed the first pipe and threw the coins into the air. As fights broke out, he turned back to the bar.
"And I had that whisky afore I go, barman. Ach, you will nae, big Jan. Shame on ye. Oh, aye, and who did and made ye big man, eh?"
The customers stopped fighting to get at the coins and got up to face a body arguing with itself.
"OK, I'm the head, right? The head's in church. Well, speaking on behalf of the legs, we're not going to stomp by and watch the head get pissed, thank you very much."
Then, to the horror of the customers, the entire bottom half of the figure turned and started to walk towards the door. The top half fell forward and gripped the bar desperately. Then the figure tore itself in half. The legs staggered towards the door and fell over. A voice from somewhere in the trousers said,
"Grivens, time for offski."
The air blurred and the door slammed. In the shocked silence, one of the customers stepped forward cautiously and prodded the heap of old clothes. The hat rolled off. He jumped back. And from outside came the sound of The broomstick hit Miss Level's thatched roof hard and stuck in it. Feagles fell off, still fighting. In a struggling, punching mass, they rolled into the cottage, up the stairs, and ended up in a head-butting, kicking heap in Tiffany's bedroom. Then gradually they became aware of a sound. It was the skirl of the mouse pipes. Hands stopped gripping throats, fists stopped in mid-punch. Tears were running down awfully wee Billy's face as he played The Bonny Flowers, the saddest song in the world. It was about home and mothers, and as the forlorn notes wound about them, the Feagles let go of one another and stared down at their feet.
"Shame on ye!"
Billy let the pipe drop out of his mouth.
Shame on ye, ye parcel of rogues! Your hag is fighting for her very soul. Have ye no honour?
He flung down the mouse pipes, which wailed into silence, and pointed to the sleeping shape of Tiffany.
Now someone take the turpentine and pour a wee drop onto a bit of cloth.
The Feagles fell over themselves to obey.
Right, Duff Wally, take the 3 things and put them up on the big wee hag's chest, where she can smell them. How can she smell them? She's out cold. The nose Disney sleep.
The 3 smells of the shepherding hut were laid reverentially below Tiffany's chin.
And now we wait and hope.
Tiffany's nose twitched, and the nose is a big thinker, good at memory, very good, and though the hiver could control brains, it was useless at noses. It opened its eyes and looked around.
The shepherding hut?
Red light shone through the open door and through the trunks of the saplings growing everywhere. Many of them were quite big now, casting long shadows, putting the setting sun behind bars. Around the hut, though, they'd been cut down.
This is a trick,
it said.
It won't work.
The hiver looked like Tiffany, although here it was slightly taller because Tiffany thought she was taller than she really was. It stepped out of the hut and onto the turf.
It's getting late, it said. Look at the trees. This place is dying. Soon all this will be part of us.
Then why are ye sweating, ye heap of jobies?
Said a voice behind it. For a moment the hiver wavered. Its shape changed many times. There were scales, fins, teeth, a pointy hat, claws, and then it was Tiffany again, smiling.
Oh, Rob, we are glad to see you.
Dinna give me that swiddle!
Rob bounced up and down in rage.
I know a hiver when I sees one. Crevens, but ye're due a kicking.
The hiver changed again, became a lion with teeth the size of swords, and roared.
Ah, it's like that, is it? Well, dinna go awa.
He ran a few steps and vanished. The hiver changed back to its Tiffany shape again.
Your little friend has gone. Come out now.
Now. But Rob Anybody returned, followed by, well, everyone. And they charged. The hiver fought back by changing shape. Swords clanged on scales, heads butted fangs. It whirled across the turf, growling and screaming, calling up past shapes, and the ground shook, so suddenly that the Feagles rolled down the slope. Even the hiver lost its footing. The shepherding hut creaked, began to settle into the turf, which opened up around it as easily as butter. The saplings trembled and fell over, and the land rose. What was there, what had always been there, became more plain. Rising toward the dark sky was a head, shoulders, millions of tons of hill creaking around them. Someone who'd been lying down, growing turf, their arms and legs the hills and valleys of the downland, was sitting up with great stony slowness. What had looked like 2 long mounds in the shape of a cross became giant green arms unfolding. A hand picked up the hiver and lifted it into the air. Far off, something thumped 3 times. The sound seemed to be coming from outside the world. The Feagles, watching from the hill that was one of the knees of the giant girl, ignored them.
Is that the big wee hag dreaming she's the hills, or the hills dreaming that they're her? Said Daft Wally. Both, maybe, said Rob. They watched the huge hand close and winced. But ye canna kill a hiver. Aye, but ye can frit it awa. If I was it, I'd no think of trying her again.
There were 3 more booms in the distance, louder this time. In Miss Level's cottage, someone was knocking heavily on the front door. Thump, thump, thump. Tiffany opened her eyes, remembered and thought, was that a dream or real? She was in bed, and Daft Wally was sitting on her pillow. It did all happen, didn't it?
Oh, aye, but the big hag was up here and said ye probably wasn't going to wake up a monster.
And are you all right?
Aye.
And Miss Level? Suddenly Tiffany's hands flew to her mouth.
Oh, no, I killed her. No, ye didn't. I did. She made me angry. It was me, I remember. And I remember dust turning into stars, heat, blood, the taste of blood. I remember things. I remember...
Shadows were closing in, and there was a ringing in her ears.
All of us. We killed her.
Then she heard the door open. Hands picked her up. She was slung over a shoulder and carried swiftly downstairs. She stared through inner mists at the dark figure standing in front of her. "Take 1 crucible of silver?" A hand slapped her sharply across the face. "What's your name?" "Bustle. Sensibility." "No, that was a wizard, Tiffany. He's the strongest echo, but you're not him. Tiffany, what is your name?" But all was confusion and strange smells. In panic, she roared. Her face was slapped again. "No, that was the saber-toothed tiger. They're all old memories the hiver left behind. It's worn a lot of creatures, but they are not you. Come forward, Tiffany." Strong hands gripped her arms. 2 blue eyes bored into hers. They shone in the mists like sapphires. "What's your name?"
"Tiffany."
"Really? Sing me the first song you ever learnt. Now." "Stop! That was never learnt on a chalk hill. I reckon you're that desert queen who killed 12 husbands with scorpion sandwiches. Back into the dark with you." Things went blurry again. She could hear whispered discussions. "Well, that might work. What's your name, Pixie?"
"Awfully wee Billy Big Chin McFeagle, mistress."
"You're very small, aren't you?"
"Only for my height."
The grip tightened again. The blue eyes glinted. "Tiffany, what does your name mean in the old speech of the Knack MacFeagle? Now, think." And it rose from the depths of her mind, up through the clamouring voices, lifting her beyond the reach of ghostly hands. Ahead, the clouds parted.
"My name is Land Under a Wave."
"Good. Now you know who you are. Be Tiffany, and the other voices will leave you alone, depend on it." And she did feel better. She'd said her name. And now she could see the black-dressed figure clearly.
"Oh, you're Mistress Weatherwax."
The old witch pushed her down gently into a chair. From every flat surface in the kitchen, the Feagles were watching. "I am, and a fine mess we have here."
How is she?"
Miss Level was standing in the doorway. She looked pale and was walking with a stick. Tiffany stood up.
I'm so sorry."
"No, it wasn't your fault. How are you? And for that matter, who?
Still me, I think. But I don't understand about the wizard or the desert queen."
"Don't you? Well, a hiver collects people. Tries to add them to itself, you might say, to think with. It kills them in the end, but keeps a sort of living memory of them. Something like a ghost."
"It's left ghosts in my head?"
"More like ghosts of ghosts." Miss Level shuddered. "Well, thank goodness you're rid of the thing at least. A nice cup of tea, anyone?" She turned to the sink.
"Crevens!"
said Rob Anybody, staring. "Mr. Anybody, shut up!" said Mistress Weatherwax quickly. "Let her get on."
"Aye, but she picked up yon teapot, Wood."
"Daft, William. There's room in my well for one more frog." Mistress Weatherwax glared, then turned back to Tiffany, while every other eye in the room watched Miss Level making tea, using 4 arms, 2 of which did not exist, and not realizing it. The kettle sailed across the room and apparently tipped itself into the pot. Cups, saucers, and the sugar bowl floated with a purpose. Mistress Weatherwax leant across the table. "Funny thing, the human mind. I once had to see to a poor young man who'd had a tree fall on his legs, lost both from the knees down, and I remember him saying, 'I can still feel my toes sometimes.' It's like the head don't accept what's happened." "Here we are," said Miss Level, bustling over with 3 cups and saucers and the sugar bowl. One for you, and... oh!" The sugar bowl dropped from an invisible hand and spilled onto the table. Miss Level stared at it in horror, while, in a hand that wasn't there, a cup and saucer wobbled without visible means of support. Mistress Weatherwax stood up. "Right, Miss Level. Your eyes are not in possession of all the facts. You know the cup's there. You can feel your arm. Now trust it. Now put the cup down gently. That's right. Now put the hands you can see flat on the table. Good. Now, without taking those hands away, go to the dresser and fetch me that blue biscuit tin, will you? I'm partial to a biscuit with my tea." "But I can't do that now." "Get past I can't, Miss Level. Don't think about it. Do it. My tea's getting cold."
So this is witchcraft, Tiffany thought. It's like Granny Aching talking to animals. It's in the voice, sharp and soft by turns, words of command and encouragement. You keep talking, making the words fill the creature's world, so that sheepdogs obey and nervous sheep are calmed. The biscuit tin floated from the dresser, the lid unscrewed and hovered in the air.
"Oh, tea-time assortment, store-bought." Mistress Weatherwax reached in delicately. "Very posh."
"But it's terribly difficult, this, like trying not to think of a pink rhinoceros."
"Well, what's so special about that?"
"It's impossible not to think of one if someone tells you mustn't," Tiffany explained.
"No, 'tain't. I ain't thinking of one right now, I give you my word. Now you just get your mind right, Miss Level, and hold on to that skill. So you've lost a spare body? What's that when all's said and done? There'll be a great saving on clothes and food. Now you stay here and rest, and we'll see to what needs doing today. You'll make a list, and Tiffany'll know the way."
"Well, let me see."
Tiffany realised she was holding her breath because of what was looming. She'd rather not breathe ever again than face Mr. Weavell and an empty box. "But, Tiffany, you're sure you're totally yourself?" Tiffany leapt for this life-saving excuse. "Well, I do feel a bit—" "She's fine. The hiver has gone from this house, I assure you." And Mistress Weatherwax pointed. Grain by grain, the spilled sugar was leaping into its bowl. "Oh, Oswald!" Miss Level's face was one huge smile. "You've come back." "She'll be fine with your little men for company," said Mistress Weatherwax as they took the lane through the woods. "It could be the making of her, you know, being half dead."
"How?"
Well, when people see her moving stuff through the air, she'll get some respect. She doesn't get much, our Miss Level."
"Then why did you and Miss Tick send me to her?"
"Because she cares about people. Even the stupid mean ones, the mothers with the runny babies, the feckless and the silly who treat her like some kind of a servant. Now that's what I call magic. That is the soul and centre of witchcraft." Mistress Weatherwax smacked her fist into her hand. "The soul and centre." Echoes came back from the trees in the sudden silence. It was several seconds before birds began to sing again. "Anyway, that's what I think." Then she turned. Tiffany was standing in the lane, looking like a drowned hen. "You all right, girl?"
"It was me, wasn't it? The hiver was me, using the thoughts it found in my head. All that nastiness, it was all me."
"But without the important bit. The bit that was locked away. Remember that."
"Yes, but supposing—"
"You think you're bad? I've seen bad, and you don't get near it. Now stop grizzling."
"What?"
"Snivelling, wallowing in misery."
"I am not."
"I want to see the girl who fought a fairy queen armed with nothing but a frying pan, because I'm telling you the hiver's still around. You only threw it out."
"I know."
"Oh, really? How?"
"Because I can feel it out there. There's a bit of me still in it, a bit I'd rather not know about. Anyway, how do you know?"
"Because I'm a bloody good witch."
"Well, it's my responsibility. I'll deal with it."
"It'll take more than a frying pan."
"I'll find a way."
"I'd like to see you try."
"I will. It'll come looking for me, understand? Me, not anyone else, and this time I'll be ready."
"Will you indeed?"
"Yes."
"When?"
"Now."
"No!" The old witch held up a hand. "No. Not yet. It's not attacking yet, and you're not ready yet, whatever you thinks. And we've got something else to do, haven't we? The wolf is out there somewhere in the woods, and you need to see to the flock. And that includes Mr. Weavile."
"Yes,"
said Tiffany. "I know." It was an interesting day. Everyone in the mountains had heard of Mistress Weatherwax, and they were treated like royalty. Not the sort who got beheaded or had something nasty done with a red-hot poker, but the sort when people walk away dazed, saying, "She actually said hello to me graciously. Ooh, I'll never wash my hand again." Not that many they dealt with washed their hands at all, Tiffany thought, with the primness of a dairy worker. She worked away at the doctoring, trying to stay calm, and if it was on something oozy, then you simply thought about how nice things would be when you stopped. Finally, they paused at the gate to a cottage with an overgrown garden. Tiffany looked up at the steep woods of the mountains. "It's up there." "I know."
"What's it doing?"
"It's got a bit of you in it. What do you think?"
"Waiting until I'm upset again, maybe. But I keep having a thought that makes no sense. I keep thinking about 3 wishes.
"Wishes for what?"
"I don't know, it's silly."
"No, it's not. It's a deep part of you trying to send yourself a message, and remember that, because now—"
"Yes, I know. Mr. Weavile."
Tiffany walked up the path, took a deep breath, and stepped into the cottage. Mr. Weavile was in his chair.
Hello, Mr. Weavile. Everything all right?"
"Oh, 'tis you."
Maybe he won't ask, she thought, as she washed up, dusted, and, not to put too fine a point on it, emptied the commode. But then the arm shot out. He grabbed her wrist.
"Check the box, Mary."
"Yes, Mr. Weavile."
She pulled it out, thinking, "I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here." She lifted the lid.
All right, gal?
Tiffany's mind was a puddle of goo. It's all here, Mr. Weavell. Only now it's gold.
Gold? Don't pull my leg.
But Tiffany recognised the worn coins. The Pixies ate off them in the mound. She put the box gently on the old man's lap, and he stared into it. Mr. Weavell, there's something I must tell you. And she told him. All of it. He listened carefully.
Well, now.
I'm sorry.
Well, it seems to I should thank you.
What?
Well, if you hadn't have took the copper, there wouldn't have been room for all this gold.
He held up a gold coin that would have bought his cottage.
Here, buy yourself some ribbons, gal.
No, I can't.
Oh?
Mr. Weavell struggled to his feet.
Well then, run up these stairs, bring down the black suit hanging behind the door, and a clean shirt, and polish my boots. 'Course this is far too much to buy a man's funeral, you see, but it'll do fine to marry him off. So I'm proposing to the widow Tussie that she engages in matrimony with I.
You are?
That I am. She's a fine woman who has all her own teeth. I know 'cause she showed I. Store-bought all the way from the big city.
Shouldn't you think about this?
Think? I got no business thinking, young lady. I'm 91, I am. Gotta be up and doing.
It took 10 minutes to get Mr. Weavell changed. Then Tiffany helped him to the garden gate, where he threw away one walking stick.
Look good, does I?
Fine, Mr. Weavell.
Everything done up?
Yes.
How's me hair?
You don't have any.
Ah, 'tis true, but I'll buy one of them what-you-call-ems. Have I got enough money for that?
A wig? You could buy thousands.
And I need a bouquet of flowers, girl. Can't go courting without flowers.
A few roses were hanging on among the weeds and briars in the garden, so Tiffany fetched a knife and made them up into a bouquet.
Oh, bless you, late bloomers just like I.
Then suddenly he frowned and stood like a statue.
I wish my Toby and Mary could come to the wedding, but they're dead, you know.
Yes, Mr. Weavell, I know. Tiffany took out a handkerchief and blew her nose. He stared at the flowers.
Nearly everyone I know is dead.
Then he straightened up again.
Still can't do nothing about that. Oh, don't cry, gal. The sun's shining, the birds is singing, and the widow Tussie is waiting.
And using the one stick, Mr. Weavell set off with surprising speed. Well, said Mistress Weatherwax, that was nice. Tiffany turned. Yes, but I wish the Feagles hadn't done that. I could have sorted it out somehow, saved up. Just be glad you have friends, child. Tiffany looked up at the tree line. Yes, but not up there. Listen, I've been thinking. I'm going away. When I meet it, I don't want to be near people. I know what it can do if it's angry. It half killed Miss Level. And if it follows you, I'll take it up there. Tiffany waved at the mountains. Alone? I don't have a choice. No, you don't. But neither have I. That's why I'll come with you. Don't argue, miss. How would you stop me, eh? Then she looked up. Ah, we've got company, I see. What she'd seen was a small shape at the edge of the woods coming closer. It resolved itself into the figure of Petulia, flying nervously a few feet above the ground. When she reached them, she got off, started to bob a curtsy to Mistress Weatherwax, remembered she was a witch, turned it into a bow, and whipped off her pointy hat. What's your name, girl?
Petulia Gristle, mistress, learning with Gwynnifer Blackcap.
Very sound with pegs. Petulia looked nervously at Tiffany.
Miss Level said you'd come here. I thought I'd see how you were. She said you'd been ill. Are you all right now? Much better, thank you. Look, I'm sorry about... Well, you were ill. Are you going to the trials? Trials? The witch trials, said Mistress Weatherwax. Oh, I'd forgotten about them.
Well, I hadn't. Never missed a trial. Never won in 60 years. Bait, Tiffany thought as they walked away up towards the high moors. She must think I'm stupid. I'm bait. Like in the old days when the hunters would tether a lamb to bring the wolves nearer. The hiver'll come for me, and she's worked something out to kill it. She's got a plan. I know it. They'd argued, of course, and Miss Level had joined in, and Mistress Weatherwax had come up with a deeply unfair argument. It was, you're 11, just 11. So what's Miss Tick going to tell your parents? Sorry about Tiffany, but here's what's left of her in this jar. The Feagles hadn't objected to her going to find the hiver, but they did object to not being allowed to come too. But as Mistress Weatherwax had said, this was true haggling, and there was no place in it for Feagles. They'd been insulted, Tiffany knew, and she tried to make a little speech thanking them for their help. But Rob Anybody had folded his arms and turned his back. It had not gone well. And now she could feel the hiver, following them, but a long way back. It was still in the woods that hugged the mountains like a scarf. And at that point, Mistress Weatherwax stumbled. Watch out! Dangerous loose stones on this path. Tiffany looked down. There weren't that many stones, and they didn't seem particularly dangerous. You all right, mistress? Sound as a bell. But she was wheezing slightly, and sat on a big rock. Just getting my second wind. Tiffany sat down with her back to the rock. How old was Mistress Weatherwax, she wondered. I notice you're limping a bit. Do you indeed? Then stop noticing. Tiffany went pale. She'd filled her pocket with random things and brought 3 fresh eggs with her. Getting the hang of a shamble was taking too long. It was stupid. So now she pulled them out without looking, wove thread around the egg like she'd done 100 times before, grasped the pieces of wood and moved them. Pock! The egg cracked and oozed. Toys, said Mistress Weatherwax. Just sticks and stones. Have you ever used one? No, couldn't get the hang of them. They got in the way. Tiffany tried again. Maybe if she very, very carefully... Pock! The egg cracked. It always cracked, and now there was only one left. She sat back and looked across the landscape, and her third thoughts thought, it's not going to come near. Why? It knows Mistress Weatherwax is with me, she thought. But how can it know that? It's not got a mind. It doesn't know what a Mistress Weatherwax is. Still thinking, thought her third thoughts. Mistress Weatherwax, she said at last, I think I know what the hiver's doing. It's thinking. I thought it had no brains. But there's still an echo of me in it, isn't there? There must be. It has an echo of everyone it's ever been. So it knows I'm with you and it's keeping away. Oh, why? It's frightened of you. And why is that? Because I am. A bit. Oh, dear. Yes, and there's another thought I'm nearly having. Mistress Weatherwax said nothing. I think we're thinking about the hiver in the wrong way. Oh? Why? Because, Tiffany struggled with the idea, because we don't want to think about it the right way. It's something to do with the third wish, but I don't know what that means. The witch said, "Well, keep picking at that thought. And now let's be going, young lady. It's still 8 miles to Sheercliff. The trials will have started before we get there." "But what about the hiver?" "Oh, it can come if it likes. Or do you want me to meet it here?" No, because things aren't what they seem. We do things wrong. I can't explain why, but it's because of the third wish." "Which you don't know what it is?" "No, but I soon will, I hope." "Yes, I hope so too." The witch stared at her. "And them as knows me, or has earned it, calls me Granny Weatherwax. I shall not take it amiss if you did the same." "Granny?" "Well, not technically. It's what they call an honorific, like Old Mother So-and-so or Goody Thingy." "I know, like Granny Aching. Everyone on the chalk called her Granny." "Well then, Granny Weatherwax it is. Now we'd best be moving. No point in standing around." And with that, the witch set off as though being pulled by a string. For an old woman, she could move quite fast. She strode over the moors as if distance were a personal insult. And the hiver still followed them. And in the silence as she walked, Tiffany could hear the memories it had left behind, hundreds of them, mostly so faint they were nothing more than a slight uncomfortable feeling in her head. But the ancient tiger still burnt brightly in the back of her brain, and behind that the giant lizard. Killing machines, the most powerful creatures in their world, once. And the hiver had taken them both. Always taking fresh bodies, always driving the owners mad with the urge for power which would always end with getting them killed. And as Tiffany wondered why, a memory said, "Because it is frightened." Frightened of what? Tiffany thought. Who knows? But it's mad with terror, completely binkers. "You're Simplicity Bustle, aren't you?" Then her ears informed her that she'd said this aloud. "Talkative, ain't he?" said Granny Weatherwax. "He doesn't know binkers from bonkers, though. Well, memory fades." As they got nearer to the trials, Tiffany saw broomsticks in the air heading the same way, and people were travelling in the same direction. They'd reached a proper track now, which dropped down through some woods, came up in a patchwork of little fields, and headed for a tall hedge, from behind which came the sound of a brass band playing a medley of songs from the shows, although by the sound of it no two musicians could agree on what song or which show. "Didn't used to be like this," Granny Weatherwax grumbled as they entered a gate. "When I was a girl, we simply used to meet up in some meadow somewhere by ourselves. But now it has to be a grand day out for all the family." Then she jerked Tiffany's chin up so that she could look into her eyes. "But look around, eh? You can't move for amulets and wands and what not. It'll be bound to keep away, eh?" Tiffany looked. There were sideshows all round the field, roll a penny, lucky dip, bobbing for piranhas, that sort of thing. And there were witch stalls thick with things that glittered and tinkled, and which were doing a brisk trade amongst the younger witches. Surely a hiver wouldn't come here. She turned to Granny Weatherwax, who wasn't there. And it's hard to find a witch at the witch trials. That is, it's easy to find a witch. Black hats were scurrying everywhere, but very hard to find the one you're looking for. Especially if you suddenly feel lost and alone, and can feel panic starting to open up inside you like a fern. The sun was high now, and more people were pouring in through the gateway. Witches were circling to land, and the field was filling up. The noise was intense. Pushing her way through the throng, Tiffany tried not to think that she was terrified and alone in this huge crowd, and that up on the hill, invisible, the hiver knew this, because a tiny part of it was her. Then she felt the it stir, begin to move. "A remarkable thing, a hiver," a voice began in her head. "Its hunting pattern mimics that of the common shark." "I do not want a lecture, Mr. Bustle," Tiffany mumbled, but Simplicity Bustle had never taken much notice of other people when he was alive, and wasn't going to begin now, in that once it has selected its prey, it will completely ignore other attractive targets. And she could see something was coming. It moved through the crowd like the wind through a field of grass. You could plot its progress by the people. Some fainted, some ran. Then the shouting started, but it was only interested in Tiffany. Like a shark, she thought, the killer of the sea, where worse things happened. She backed away, panic filling her up. She put her hands into her pockets and touched her lucky stone, and string, and the piece of chalk. If this were a story, she thought, I'd trust in my heart, follow my star, and it would all turn out right. But you're never in a story when you need to be. Story. In stories, the genie or the witch or the magic cat offers you 3 wishes. The third wish is the important one. She grabbed a witch hurrying past and looked into the face of Anagramma. "Anagramma, quickly, when you get 3 wishes, what's the third wish?" "But why don't think about it, answer." "Well, it could be anything, being invisible or blonde or—" Tiffany let her go and ran to an old witch who was staring at the commotion. "Please, mistress, this is important. In stories, what's the third wish? Please, remember."
Happiness, isn't it? Yes, definitely. Health, wealth, and happiness.
"Happiness, thank you." Tiffany looked around desperately for someone else. It wasn't happiness, she knew. You couldn't get happiness by magic. And that was another clue. She saw Miss Tick hurrying between some tents. She pulled her around. "Hello, Miss Tick. Yes, I'm fine. I hope you are well too. What is the third wish? Quickly, this is important. Please don't argue or ask questions. There isn't time." Miss Tick, to her credit, hesitated only for a moment. "To have 100 more wishes, isn't it?" Tiffany stared. "Thank you. It isn't, but that's a clue too. Tiffany, there's a—" But Tiffany had seen Granny Weatherwax. She was standing in the middle of a big square that had been roped off, calmly watching the frantic witches around the hiver, where there was an occasional flash and sparkle of magic. Tiffany ducked under the rope. "Granny?" "Yes?" "In stories, where you're given 3 wishes, what's the third wish?" "Ah, stories. That's easy. In any story worth the telling, the third wish is the one that undoes the harm the first 2 wishes caused."
Yes, that's it.
And it's not evil. It can't be. It hasn't got a mind of its own. Yes, this is all about wishes. Our wishes. Now, calm down. Granny took her by the shoulders, so she faced the panicking crowd. It's coming now, and it's you it wants. Are you ready? But supposing I lose? Turn into something terrible? You beat it once, you can do it again. Now, do you have it in you to be a witch by noonlight, far away from your hills? Yes. The old witch bowed low, taking a few steps back. In your own time, madam. Wishes. Tiffany fumbled in her pockets for the bits to make a shamble. It's not evil. It gives us what we think we want. You couldn't say a monster made me do it. She'd wished the money was hers, and the hiver had taken her at her thoughts. The secret desires, the moments of rage, all the things that real humans knew how to ignore. It didn't let you ignore them. Then, as she fumbled to tie the pieces together, the egg flipped out of her hands and smashed on her boot. She stared at it. No more eggs. Then there was a scream high up. It was a buzzard in the eye of the sun, getting bigger in its plunge towards the field. As it passed over her head, something small dropped like a stone.
"Grevans!"
But there was a thwap, and suddenly a balloon of cloth snapped open. 2 balloons, in fact. Rob Anybody had borrowed Hamish's parachute. He let go and dropped neatly into the strings of the shamble.
"Did you think we'd leave ye? No, get on with it."
"What, with you? I can't. I always crack the eggs. I'll kill you."
"Ach, dinna argue. Do it."
People were running past now, and Tiffany could see a moving shape in the dust. She looked at the tangle in her hands and Rob's grinning face. OK, why hasn't it worked before? Because there was no reason for it to. I didn't need it to work, but now I need it to help me. No, I need me to help me. So think about it. Think about the moment. She'd used the things she had, so that was right. Things from home. No, not all the things. She felt the shape of what wasn't there, and tugged at the silver horse around her neck, breaking its chain, hanging it in the threads. Suddenly her thoughts were as cool and clear as ice. Let's see. Yes, that looks better there. That needs to be pulled this way. The movement jerked the silver horse into life. It spun gently, passing through the threads and Rob Anybody.
"Didn't it hurt? Keep going, but hurry."
Tiffany felt a tingle in her feet. The horse gleamed as it turned. I'm far from home, she thought, but I have it in my eye. Now I open my eyes. Now I open my eyes again. Can I be a witch away from my hills? Of course. I never really leave you, land under wave. The shepherds on the chalk felt the ground shake like thunder under the turf. Birds scattered, sheep looked up. Again the ground trembled. Some said a shadow crossed the sun. Some said they heard hooves. And a boy, catching hares in the little valley of the horse, said the hillside had burst, and a horse as high as the sky had leapt out with a mane like the wave of the sea and a coat as white as chalk. He said it had galloped into the air like rising mist and flown towards the mountains like a storm. He got punished for telling stories, of course, but he thought it was worth it. The shamble glowed, silver coursed along the threads. It sparkled like stars, and in that light she saw the hiver spread out all around her, invisibility made visible. It rippled, reflecting the light oddly. In those glints and sparkles there were faces, wavering and stretching like reflections in water. Tendrils of it reached towards her. Beyond the wall of hiver, witches were staring at her. One had lost her hat in the commotion, but it was hanging in the air. It hadn't had time to fall yet. Time was going slowly. The hiver shimmered. She felt its panic, its terror. Welcome. Welcome? Yes. You are safe here? No, we are never safe. You are here. Please, shelter us. What are you hiding from? Everything. Do you know what it feels like to be aware of every star, every blade of grass? Yes, but you do it for a moment. No sleep, no rest, no sanctuary, just endless awareness of everything for eternity. How we envy you, humans who can close your minds. You build little worlds, little stories, little shells around your minds that keep infinity at bay and allow you to wake in the morning without screaming. I think I know what you mean. Yes, pity us. Pity us. You have minds within minds. We saw that in you. Hide us. But I don't think any human could survive you. You give us what we want, and the wishes always go wrong. Yes, we know that now. We have an echo of you now. And now we come to you with the wish that puts the others right. Yes, that's always the third wish. Teach us the way to die. I don't know it. You do know it. All humans know the way. You walk it every day of your short, short lives. You know how to end. Yes, somewhere, deep down, I must know how to die, Tiffany thought. So think, get past the I can't. She held up the glittering shamble, but she didn't need it any more. She could hold the power in the centre of herself. The light died, and Rob, still hanging in the threads, looked stunned. Tiffany lowered him to the ground and then put the rest in her pocket. Thank you, Rob, but go now. This could get serious.
No, I'm not leaving. I promised Jeanie to keep you safe. Let's get on with it.
There was no arguing. Rob was standing, fists bunched, chin out, ready for anything. Thank you, Rob. She straightened up. Life ends, she thought, and there's death waiting right behind us. So it must be close, very close. It would be a door. Yes, old wood. She turned. Behind her there was a black door in the air. She pushed it open. Beyond the door, black sand stretched away under a sky of pale stars. There were mountains on the distant horizon. Help us through, said the voices of the hiver.
If you tak my advice, you'll nae do that,
said Rob from her ankle.
I dinna trust the scunner.
You don't have to come, Rob.
Oh, aye? And I'm to see across death's threshold alone, am I?
You've a clan and a wife.
Aye, and I will nae dishonour them.
Tiffany stared through the doorway. She stepped across. Nothing much changed. The sand felt gritty underfoot. The air wasn't cold, but thin and prickly to breathe. The door shut softly behind her. Thank you. What do we do now? You die, I think. But there is no me to die. Only us. Tiffany took a deep breath. Here is a story to believe. Once we were blobs in the sea, then fishes, lizards, rats and monkeys. Our blood is as salty as the sea we used to live in. This hand was once a fin, this one once had claws. In my mouth I've the pointy teeth of a wolf, the chisel teeth of a rabbit, and the grinding teeth of a cow. Everything we've ever been on the way to becoming us, we still are. I'm made of the memories of my parents, grandparents, all my ancestors. You say you're us, but you're not different from us, except we know not to listen to the monkey. You puzzle us, said the hiver. The old bit of our brains that wants to be head monkey and attacks when it's surprised. Then it doesn't think, it reacts. But being human is knowing when not to be the monkey. When you take people over, though, you silence the human part. You listen to the monkey, which doesn't know what it needs, only what it wants. No, you are not an us. You're an I. I? Me? So who am I? You want a name? That helps. A name? Yes. I've always liked Arthur. Arthur. I like Arthur too. And if I am, I can stop. What happens next? Tiffany looked at the endless sand. I think you have to cross the desert. What's on the other side? Tiffany hesitated. Some people think you go to a better world. Some think you come back to this one in a different body, and some think there's nothing. You just stop. And what do you think? I think you have to cross the desert to find out. I look forward to it. Thank you. Goodbye, Arthur. She felt the hiver fall away. With a movement of a few sand grains, a sizzle in the air, it slid slowly across the black sand.
And good riddance to ye,
Rob Anybody shouted after it. No, don't say that.
but it killed folk to stay alive.
It didn't want to. It didn't know how people work.
Well, that was a fine load of blethers you gave it at any rate.
Tiffany wondered if it had been. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe it only had to be true enough for Arthur. Her eyes, the inner eyes that opened twice, were beginning to close. She could feel the power draining away. You couldn't stay in that state for long. She sat down, just for a moment, and picked up a handful of the sand. It rose above her head, twisting like smoke, reflecting the starlight through it, then settled back, as if it had all the time in the world. She'd never felt this tired. She closed her eyes and closed her eyes again.
Hey, rise and shine!
Someone kicked her hard on the foot.
You canna get to sleep, no here.
Still feeling muzzy, Tiffany pushed herself back onto her feet and turned to the dark door. It wasn't there. There were her footprints in the sand, but they were slowly disappearing. There was nothing around her but dead desert. Forever. She turned back towards the distant mountains, but her view was blocked by a tall figure in black, holding a scythe. "Good afternoon." Tiffany stared up into a black hood. There was a skull in it, but the eye sockets glowed blue. At least bones had never frightened her. They were only chalk that had walked around. But Rob Anybody gave a yell and leapt for the hood. There was a thud. Death took a step backwards, then raised a skeletal hand to his cowl and pulled out an incandescently angry pixie by his hair, holding him at arm's length. "Is this yours?" No, his." "I was not expecting a Nac-Mac-Feagle today. Otherwise I would have worn protective clothing. Ha ha." "You are Death, aren't you?" "You are not afraid?" "No, not yet. This might sound a silly question, but which way to the egress, please?" There was a pause. "Isn't that a female eagle?" "No, everyone thinks that. Actually, it's the way out, the exit." Death pointed. "You have to walk the desert. But only the dead take that way." "There was a door here." "Ah, yes, but that was a way in, you see." "What's the difference?" "A fairly important one. You will have to see yourselves out, and do not fall asleep here. Sleep here never ends." Death vanished. Rob dropped to the sand. They were alone.
You'll have to make a door.
"I don't know how. Rob, can you get out?"
Aye, probably, but I've got to see ye safe.
Tiffany slumped down onto the sand again. "No, I'll never get out." She looked around. There were occasional changes in the light, little puffs of dust. People she couldn't see were walking past her, dead people crossing the desert. "And I'm 11, she thought. "People will be upset." She thought about the farm, her mother and father. She wondered if Rob could send a message. But to say what? I'm not dead, just stuck. Thank you for coming, Rob. When you leave, go straight back to Jeanie, understand?
Oh, aye. I've sent the lads back already, but Hamish is waiting for me.
At which point the door appeared and opened. Granny Weatherwax stepped through, beckoning urgently. Some people don't have the sense they were born with. Come on, right now. Behind her, the door started to swing shut, but she rammed her boot against the jamb. Oh, no, you don't. Tiffany got up and hurried forward, all tiredness suddenly gone. Quickly now, and you, Mr. Anyone. Rob jumped onto Granny's boot before she pulled it away. The door shut with a click, disappeared, and left them in deadlight, a space of grey air. Won't take long. It's the world getting back into line. Oh, don't look like that. I know this path already, and we don't talk about it, understand? But you did quite well. She brushed some grass seed off her dress. I hope Mrs. Hogg's arrived. I need a recipe for apple chutney. And light burst in upon them. Someone was wiping Tiffany's forehead with a damp cloth. There were voices around her, and she recognised the chronic complainer's tones of anagramma.
And she was really making a fuss in Zax. Honestly, I don't think she's quite right in the head. I think she's literally cuckoo. She didn't fool me for 1 minute.
Tiffany opened her eyes and saw the round pink face of Petulia screwed up with concern. She's awake. She sat up. Where is this? The first aid and lost children's tent. You fainted when Mistress Weatherwax brought you back from wherever you'd gone.
She said you'd, dragged the monster into, the next world,
said Lucy Warbeck, her eyes gleaming. Well, it wasn't quite... Then Tiffany felt something prod her in the back. She reached behind her, and her hand came back holding a pointy hat that was almost grey with age. Mistress Weatherwax gave you her hat, her actual hat. That's nice. Tiffany was used to second-hand clothes.
She said you were a born witch, said Dimity Hubbub.
It's only an old hat, said Anagramma. Tiffany looked up at the tall girl. Anagramma? She raised a hand. Do you want a balloon?
Oh, no, don't do that. Someone stop her.
Anagramma backed away and Tiffany slid off the table. Anagramma took another step back and fell over a bench.
No, please.
Then I shan't buy you one, but please learn what literally really means, will you? She picked up the hat. It was very battered and not extremely clean. She opened the door for me. The door out of into the desert of black sand. Death was there. I spoke to him.
Oh, did you?
Said Anagramma. And what did he say, pray? He didn't say pray, and he didn't know what an egress was.
It's a small type of heron, isn't it?
Said Harrietta Bilk. There was silence, except for the noise of the trials outside.
Look, said Lucy Warbeck, we didn't really, see anything. You were standing there with this, glow around you, and then Mistress Weatherwax stepped right in, and you both, stood there, and then the glow went zip and vanished, and you, fell over.
What Lucy's failing to say, said Anagramma, is that we didn't see you actually go anywhere. The glow could have been anything. Ball lightning, probably. Anagramma was going to be a good witch, Tiffany considered. She could bounce back like a ball. Then she sighed. She felt tired. She just wanted to go home. She'd walk there now if her boots weren't suddenly so uncomfortable. She undid the laces and tugged one off, and silver-black dust poured out When it hit the ground, it bounced slowly, curving up into the air again like mist. The girls watched in silence. Then Petulia reached out and caught some. The fine stuff flowed through her fingers and fell as slowly as feathers. "Sometimes things go wrong," she said. "Mistress Blackcap told me when old folk are dying, sometimes they can't leave because they don't know the way. That's when they need you there. She said it's the last thing you can do for someone, to help them find the door so they don't get lost in the dark. She said there's a dark desert they have to cross where—"
"Ha!" said Anagramma. "Mrs. Arwidge says that sort of thing is black magic."
"Does she? Well, Mistress Blackcap says sometimes the moon is light and sometimes it's in shadow, but you should always remember it's the same moon. And, Anagramma?"
"Yes?"
"Don't you ever dare interrupt me again as long as you live. Don't you dare!" And then there were the trials themselves. But Tiffany, stepping out with the girls around her, sensed the buzz. It said, was there any point now, after what had happened? Still, a lot of the older witches had dragged their chairs to the edge of the rope square. It seemed it was going to happen after all. Tiffany sat on the grass with Granny Weatherwax's hat in front of her and was aware of whispering spreading out into the crowd. She really did do it too, all the way to the desert. Saw the dust. But as Petulia had said, there were no judges, no prizes. The trials weren't like that. It wasn't a competition, honestly. No one won. And if you believed that, you'd believe that the moon is pushed around the sky by a goblin called Wilberforce. What was true was that one of the older witches generally opened the thing with some competent but not surprising trick that broke the ice. This year it was Goody Trample and her singing mice. But Tiffany wasn't paying attention. On the other side of the roped-off square, sitting on a chair and surrounded by older witches like a queen on her throne, was Granny Weatherwax. The whispering went on.
"Didn't have no training, just did it. Didn't just open the door, she stepped right in. Yeah, but who was it fetched her back? Esme Weatherwax, that's who. Any little fool could have opened the door by luck. It takes a real witch to bring her back. That's a winner, that is." "And why did she give the girl her hat, eh? She never takes her hat off to no one. What's she want us to think?"
You could feel the tension, crackling like summer lightning. The mice did their best with "I'm forever blowing bubbles," but it was easy to see their minds weren't on it. Mice are highly strung and very temperamental. "You know, Tiffany," said Lucy Warbeck, "everyone knows you did it. All you've got to do is, stand up and admit it. I mean, no one's ever, done something like that at the trials." "Yes, you'd win," said Dimity Hubbub. "Even some of the older ones would like to see her taken down a peg." "And it's about time the old bully lost," said Anagramma. "But she's not a bully," Tiffany thought, staring at Granny Weatherwax. "She's tough, and expects other witches to be tough, because the edge is no place for people who break. Everything with her is a kind of test." And as she thought that, Granny turned and caught her eye. The mice stopped singing, mostly in embarrassment. There was a pause, and people started to clap. Then a witch stepped out into the square, clapping in that fluttery, hands held together at shoulder-height way. "Very well done, Doris. Excellent as ever. Thank you." Ahem. She hesitated while Doris Trample crawled around on hands and knees, trying to urge her mice back into their box. One of them was having hysterics. "And now perhaps some lady would like to take the stage? Anyone?" There was stillness. "Now don't be shy, ladies. Modesty does not become us." Tiffany felt the pointy hats turning. Some towards her, some towards Granny Weatherwax. Granny brushed someone's hand from her shoulder sharply, without breaking eye contact with Tiffany. "And we're not wearing hats," thought Tiffany. "You gave me a virtual hat once, and I thank you. But today I don't need it. Today I know I'm a witch."
"Oh, come now, this is the trials. Surely some lady, or young lady, perhaps?"
"Come on, Tiffany," Dimity urged. "They know you're good." Tiffany shook her head. Then Petulia got to her feet, rolling up her sleeves. "Well, I'm going to do the pig trick." There was a stir in the crowd.
"Oh, I see, it's going to be... Oh, you, Petulia!"
"Yes, Miss Casement, I'll perform the pig trick."
"But you don't seem to have brought a pig with you."
"No, I shall perform the pig trick without a pig." This caused cries of "Impossible!" and "There are children here, you know."
"Oh, well, if you're sure, dear."
"Yes, I am. I shall use a sausage." Petulia produced one from a pocket and held it up. But Tiffany didn't see the trick, nor did Granny Weatherwax. Their gaze was like an iron bar. Then she heard the squeal, the gasp of amazement, and the thunder of applause. And then other witches got up. Miss Level juggled balls that stopped and reversed direction in mid-air. A middle-aged witch demonstrated a new way to stop people choking, which doesn't sound magical until you understand that a way of turning nearly dead people into fully alive people is worth a dozen spells that go twing. Others came up with handy tips and tricks that went whee, or in one case exploded. And then there were no more. Miss Casement made one final invitation to any ladies, or indeed young ladies, who might like to come forward. There was a silence so thick you could have stuck pins in it.
"Oh, well, in that case, I declare the trials well and truly closed. Tea in the big tent."
Tiffany and Granny stood up at the same time to the second and bowed to one another. Then Granny joined the stampede towards the teas.
"You gave it away," said a sharp voice behind Tiffany. "You had it in your hand and gave it all away. Do you have a taste for humble pie?"
"Now, you listen to me, Anagramma." Petulia pointed a furious finger. But Tiffany lowered the girl's arm and smiled. What she wanted to say was, "Where I come from, Anagramma, they have sheepdog trials. Shepherds travel from all over to show off their dogs, and there are silver crooks and belts with silver buckles and prizes of all kinds. But do you know the big prize? No, you wouldn't. There was an old lady always at the front of the crowd, with her pipe in her mouth and the two finest sheepdogs ever pupped at her feet. Their names were Thunder and Lightning, and they moved so fast they set the air on fire. But she never ever put them in the trials, and what every young shepherd wanted, really wanted, wasn't some silly cup, but to see her take her pipe out of her mouth as he left the arena and quietly say, 'That'll do,' because that meant he was a real shepherd, and all the other shepherds would know it too. And if you told him he had to challenge her, he'd cuss and tell you he'd sooner spit the sun dark. How could he ever win? She was shepherding. What you took away from her, you'd take away from yourself. You don't understand that, do you? But it's the soul and centre of it. The soul and centre." But it would be wasted. So what she said was, "Oh, shut up, Anagramma. Let's see if there's any buns left." And overhead a buzzard screamed. She looked up. The bird turned on the wind and, racing through the air, began the long glide towards home. And one afternoon, about a week later, Tiffany went to see Granny Weatherwax. It was only 15 miles as the broomstick flies, and as she still didn't like flying, Miss Level took her, the invisible part of Miss Level. Tiffany lay flat on the stick, holding on with arms, legs and knees, and took a paper bag to be sick into, because no one likes anonymous sick dropping out of the sky. She was also holding a large Hessian sack. She didn't open her eyes until the rushing noises had stopped, and when she fell off, the broomstick was just above some quite thick moss. "Thank you," she said as she got up. She looked around this clearing on the side of a hill. It was unfenced. There was a well and a cottage. At one side of the cottage were Granny Weatherwax's beehives, and as Tiffany turned to look at them, the bees poured out in a dark stream. They swarmed towards her, formed a column, and made a witch of bees in front of her, thousands of them, all holding station in the air. Then, with a rise in the level of buzzing, the witch maid of bees leant closer to her, as if staring at her with its thousands of little jewelled eyes. "Shall we dance?" Tiffany said. Then there was a faint piping noise from inside the figure, and the bee witch exploded into a spreading, buzzing cloud which raced away across the clearing and disappeared. Tiffany breathed out. "Now some would have found that scary," said a voice behind her. "Good afternoon, Granny Weatherwax." Then she turned. "And to what do I owe the pleasure?" Tiffany opened her sack. "I've brought your hat back." "Have you? Why?" "Because it's yours. Thank you for the loan of it." Granny lifted up the battered hat. "I dare say there's young witches who'd give their high teeth for an old hat of mine. There are. But I think everyone has to find their own hat, the right one for them. I see you're wearing one of them skyscrapers with stars. Think that makes it more magical, do you? Stars?" "I did when I bought it. And it'll do for now." "Until you find the right hat?" "Yes." "Which ain't mine?" "No." "Good. Tell me, your grandmother, did she wear a hat?" "No, not usually. She'd wear an old sack as a kind of bonnet when the weather was really bad, but she said hats only blow away up on the hill." "Ah, she made the sky her hat then. But you didn't come to talk about hats." Granny stared at Tiffany's hopeful face and sighed. "Come outside then," she said. "I'll give you lesson 1. It's the only lesson there is. It don't need writing down in no book with eyes on." She led the way to the well in her back garden. "You understand that glittery stuff is just toys, and toys can lead you astray." "Yes." "Then take off that shiny horse you wear around your neck, girl, and drop it in the well." Obediently, half hypnotized by the voice, Tiffany reached behind her neck and undid the clasp. The pieces of the silvery horse shone as she held it over the water. She stared at it as if she was seeing it for the first time. And then, "She tests people," she thought, "all the time." "Well," said the old witch. "No," said Tiffany. "I can't." "Can't or won't?" said Granny sharply. "Can't," said Tiffany and stuck out her chin. "And won't." She drew her hand back and fastened the necklace again, glaring defiantly at Granny Weatherwax. The witch smiled. "Well done," she said quietly. "If you don't know when to be a human being, you don't know when to be a witch, and if you're too afraid of going astray, you won't go anywhere. May I see it, please?" Tiffany reached behind her neck, undid the clasp, and handed over the necklace. Granny held it up. The pieces of the silver horse shone. "Funny, ain't it? It seems to gallop when the light hits it. She watched it twist this way and that. Well-made thing. Course, it's not what a horse looks like, but it's certainly what a horse is. And Tiffany stared at her, mouth open. For a moment Granny Aching stood there, grinning. And then Granny Weatherwax was back. Did she do that, she wondered? Or did I do it myself? I didn't only bring the hat back, she managed to say. I brought you a present, too. There's no call to bring me a present. But Tiffany opened her sack again and handed over a small, soft parcel. I thought you might have a use for this. Slowly the old woman unwrapped the white paper. The zephyr billow cloak unrolled itself under her fingers and filled the air like smoke. It's lovely, but I couldn't wear it. You need gravitas to carry off a cloak like that. What's gravitas? Oh, dignity, seniority, wisdom. Ah. Granny stared at the gently rippling cloak. It really was a wonderful creation. One of those things that fill a hole in your life that you didn't know was there until you'd seen it. She let it curl round her neck and fastened it with a crescent-shaped brooch. Well, I suppose there's those as can wear a cloak like this, but it's too grand for the likes of me. No, it really suits you. Granny turned slowly, watching the cloak curve in the air. Perhaps you'll call again sometimes. Yes, I'd like that. What's inside you? Tiffany thought. Who are you really in there? Did you want me to take your hat? Because it must be hard being the best. You're not allowed to stop, and you're too proud ever to lose. Well, we'll meet again one day. At the witch trials, we both know it. Oh, yes, and I know how you manage not to think of a pink rhinoceros if someone says pink rhinoceros, she said aloud. Ah, that's deep magic, that is. No, it's not. You don't know what a rhinoceros looks like, do you? Sunlight filled the clearing as the old witch laughed, as clear as a downland stream. That's right, she said. It was one of those strange days in late February when it's warmer than it should be, and although there's a wind, it never seems to be quite where you are. Tiffany climbed up onto the downs where the early lambs had already found their legs and were running around like woolly rocking horses. It had been an interesting winter. She'd learnt a lot. One was that you could be a bridesmaid to two people who between them were over 170 years old, and Mr. Weevil, his wig spinning on his head, had insisted on giving a gold piece to our little helper. And she'd used some of it to buy a really good brown cloak. It didn't billow out behind her, but it was warm and thick and kept her dry. Miss Level had been happy to give her leave for the lambing festival, when the shepherd's year began, and which the old people called sheep bellies. The hag of the hills couldn't miss that. That was when the future happened. And she'd helped it happen, working by lantern light, dealing with the difficult births. With knife and needle, thread and hands and soothing words, she'd saved ewes from the black doorway and helped new lambs into the light, and she'd walked home proudly in the morning, bloody to the elbows, but it had been the blood of life. And the people of the chalk thought of her differently now. They didn't like witches who'd always come from outside as strangers, but there was our Tiffany, birthing the lambs like her granny did. OK, she's wearing a hat with big stars on, but she makes good cheese, and she's Granny Aching's granddaughter. So if witch she be, then she's our witch. No one's throwing Granny Aching's granddaughter into a pond. Tomorrow she'd go back to the mountains again. And it had been a busy 3 weeks, quite apart from the lambing. She'd gone up to the Feagles mound and slid down the hole. She'd gone prepared with clean torn-up handkerchiefs and some soap-wort shampoo made to Miss Level's recipe. Jeanie, she felt, would have a use for these, and lying on her stomach so she could get part of her body into the Kelder's chamber, she'd been allowed to hold all 8 of what she thought of as the Roblets, born at the same time as the lambs. 7 were bawling and fighting one another. The 8th lay quietly, biding her time. The future happened. And Roland had invited her to tea at the castle. It was funny how in a couple of years he'd gone from a lumbering oaf into a young man, nervous when she smiled at him. He'd shyly presented her with a dictionary of amazingly uncommon words, and she'd found a bookmark in the P section and a pencil underline under the words plongeon, a small curtsy, no longer used, and she'd blushed. It's always surprising to be reminded that while you're watching people, all knowing and superior, they're watching you. She'd stopped wearing the hat except in public because it kept getting bent low by doorways. She was wearing it today, though, as she reached the place where 4 rusty iron wheels were half buried in the turf and a pot-bellied stove stood up from the grass. Silence spread out around her, a living silence, and the world turned. Why'd you go away? So that you can come back. The words ran through her mind, and she found herself fill up with joy at the new lambs, at life, at everything. "I've come back," she announced to the hills. "Better than I went." Then she snatched off the hat with stars on. It wasn't a bad hat for show, but it was never her hat. The only hat worth wearing was the one you made for yourself. Your own hat, for your own head. So she hurled the starry hat up as high as she could, and the wind there caught it neatly. It was lifted by a gust, and swooping and spinning, it sailed away across the downs and vanished forever. Then Tiffany made a hat out of the sky and sat on the old pot-bellied stove while the sun went down. And as the shadows lengthened, small shapes crept out of the nearby mound and joined her to watch. The sun set, which is everyday magic, and warm night came. The hat filled up with stars.